deaths and fatal shootings when the study was actually just shootings in general in Johnson. So they only retracted it not because the data was bad, but because people were misquoting it. Why does it matter that it's a preprint?
Because it hasn't been peer-reviewed, it hasn't been published. He's also the only author for this, whereas his original.
Why does it matter that he's the only author? Either the data is wrong or it's not.
There's even
You're trying
less
to nitpick whether the data is wrong he's presenting or it's not. You're trying to nitpick that it's
please, wait, Lauren.
Whoa, are you saying the dogs are racist?
First, I'd like to start with introductions. So let's go ahead and start with, I guess, the opposing side. Mr. Fanatiq, would you mind telling the folks at home about yourself?
Okay, my name is Fanatiq. I guess Fanatiq is always taken, so I go by Mr. Fanatiq very often. It's spelled with a Q. I'm a musician primarily, but I guess I've kind of gotten into Twitch politics. I just kind of like discussing things and debating things and trying to come to like meaningful resolutions. I don't know, I'm kind of happy to be here. Streaming is probably where you'll find me most of the time, twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatiq, but you can find my music on every platform under the name Fanatiq, Fanatiq. I've released 2 albums last year, and I don't know, now I'm just mainly biding my time till I release my next one with politics.
And so despite that very polite intro, he's known for being extremely polite and extremely good faith. And then he's also known for being a little spicy. So I just want everybody to be ready for that in case we get some spice during the debate. Also, basically what I want to say too, so having Fanatiq and Rose Wrist here, we don't have any slouches, okay? We're not handpicking who we debate or anything like that. Fanatiq is a well-known debater on the panel scene. He does very well. And then same thing with our next guest, Mr. Rose Wrist. Mr. Rose Wrist, would you mind introducing yourself to the folks at home who may not have heard of you before?
Yep, my name is Rose Wrist. I'm a Swedish progressive social democrat leaning person. I have a YouTube channel titled Rose Wrist. I put up videos every day of the week except for Sundays where I stream. I also stream Tuesdays and Thursdays, so something going on every day, sometimes 2 things going on a day. And yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation on systemic racism and all the other stuff as well. A bit tired, Kia furniture hands and everything, got some bruises going on, but otherwise doing phenomenally. So thank you for having me on.
No, awesome. Thanks. Thank you to both of you guys for showing up. And then Miss, kind of somebody a little bit smaller, just getting started on the twitch.tv scene. Miss Lauren Southern, can you kind of introduce yourself to the folks at home who might not know who you are?
Hi guys, I'm Lauren Southern. I do political commentary. Everyone hates me. Resident punching bag for everyone on this in this sphere of the internet. But I punch back too. And that's why people enjoy watching my content, I think. All right, Connor?
Yeah. So my name is Connor. I identify as centrist or center right. The reason why we don't have a moderator is because we're hoping that we can be big boys and big girls and yell at each other in a tactful but fun way. And we're going to be discussing some serious things. So I'm going to go over the subjects broadly. And then Rose Wrist, since you actually wrote your side's introductions, if you want to read off your kind of like your positive statements, I'll read off our positive statements. We can do 1 minute, like 30-second intros or 1 minute intros, and then we can get into the fight or conversation. So let's talk about the general, the topics that we agreed upon before beginning this live stream was systemic racism, protesting or rioting, and also police reform in general. Those are the 3 subjects. We're going to try to keep it at 30 minutes to 45 minutes each. We got about a 2-hour live stream ahead of us. And then Rose Wrist, I do have your positive arguments here, but they're also in the message thread. Do you want me to read them or do you want to read them yourself?
You can read out the base arguments from both sides, and then we can do like proper opening statements on the specific topics.
Okay, just so the audience can prepare themselves, these are the positive statements that we sent to each other before the debate. This is going to be the left side positive statements. We believe that there exist structural systems issues which lead to undesirable racial disparity, disparate outcomes. Number 2, we believe in the right to peacefully protest against societal injustices and organized political movements against those. We believe in significant police reform designed to reduce police brutality, malpractice, and racial bias. The right side positive statements that the left wing was able to prepare against was historical explanations for disparities exist, but systemic racism has become 1, a catch-all explanation for issues, and 2, it's been applied toxically to worsen discourse, not improve it. The second point that we had was violence is counterproductive for political ends, and the riots and those excusing them destroyed a real moment of opportunity for reform. And finally, there are real solutions to police reform that are not race-based, but discourse is so toxic we can't even talk about solutions. And then Fanatiq, are you doing okay over there?
Yeah, it totally messed up my
I'm sorry,
my
I'm trying to
video.
fix my camera. Hold on one second.
It's okay. Lauren's cheating by knocking out the left wing opposition before we even get started, so that's fine. So
Okay,
so
There we go.
Rose Wrist, like Rose Wrist, Fanatic, Lauren, me, let's all do like 60-second intros. And let's start with our perspectives of systemic racism for the first segment, 30 minutes to 45 minutes of debate discussion.
All right, sounds good. Do you want to start, Fanatic, or do you have any preferences?
Sure. I guess I'll start with our. So are we just talking on our entire perspective, or what exactly?
We can fight as disorganized or ADD as y'all are prepared for, but basically what I plan on doing is focusing on 3 separate subjects: 1, systemic racism; 2, protesting and riots; and 3, police reform in general. If we have some crossover, I don't think it's a big deal. But if you just want to read whatever you have as a prepared intro, we can get into it.
Let's focus. In my opinion, we should focus on systemic racism first. Otherwise, we'll just shoot off into 1,000 different topics if we start our statements.
Okay.
Doing all 3.
I guess we had written.
Just go for it, buddy. Go for
All
it,
right,
buddy.
listen.
I believe in you.
Okay, here we are. Look. Okay. We can all agree that there are plenty of unpragmatic people who have corroded the meaning of systemic racism. These bad actors have policy prescriptions for the reform of policing as an institution. Examples of this include criminal justice reform in San Francisco and various other places, and the stripping of police budgets in several municipalities, which has caused disastrous upticks in crime. Both sides can admit this is unproductive. Consequently, that's not the conversation we're interested in having. We're here to talk about the meaningful policy differences between a conservative and progressive liberal framework and understanding of these issues related to systemic racism, BLM, and police reform. This shouldn't include critique of hyperbolic elements on the far left or far right, but rather an analysis of the positions that differentiate the 2 sides of the debate stage that we have before us today.
Okay, beautifully said, but we're probably going to do some shitposting and meme stuff too. So, Rose Wrist, go ahead.
All right. The very beginning argument I guess we can make for the existence of systemic racism is a very simple one. It's a combination of 5 premises, which I think that it's reasonable to assume that most people would agree, and otherwise we'll have a good time arguing them. And all of them sort of like link together into a conclusion that, at least per mine and Fanatic's definition, easily fits the definition of systemic racism and a racially driven class disparities within society as a whole. And you guys can feel free to contest that. So those premises go something along the lines of number 1, Black Americans experienced significant discrimination in the past. Number 2, this discrimination had significant effects on their wealth as a social group. Number 3, wealth gaps don't just spontaneously solve themselves in society, especially not on the short of the timescale that we have seen when we're discussing this issue. Number 4, your parents' wealth predicts your own, so basically generational wealth exists. And number 5, wealth garners you generalized advantages in society. So you're better off in a lot of different ways just because, by virtue of you being wealthy. So the conclusion based on these 5 premises is that by virtue of largely unaddressed racist treatment in the past, Black Americans face relatively poor outcomes in the current day in comparison to other racial groups. And this is something that, we find undesirable and something that should be remedied through a wide range of different policies.
Okay, then I'll do my addressing, and then we'll leave it to Lauren, and then get into the open. Just to assuage both of your anxieties, it seems like you guys are very solution oriented. This is actually a very weird debate where I feel like we have a more of an opportunity to fight in the descriptive portion to it, and then we might actually have some consensus on the prescription. So actually, if y'all would humor us for fighting over the descriptive portion of the debate, I think that's where we can kind of fight a little bit, and then get to the more solution oriented stuff towards the end. So basically, I'll just say my contention for systemic racism in general. I think the primary concern, and I know Fanatic kind of tied my hand behind my back before we even started the fight. My problem with like systemic racism or historical analysis of generational wealth is that basically I can acknowledge some of these things as historical realities. The problem is when it's misapplied, when it's used as like a catch-all for every explanatory variable in society, and also when it's used as a cover for basically anti-white bigotry. That's like the primary contention. Now that could absolutely be nefarious actors, but that's kind of where I want to talk about those nefarious actors, how they're getting in the way of the process, and then we can kind of take it from there. So Lauren, take it away.
Yeah, okay, I'll be real, I was just having a boomer moment there. Oh, my mic was muted, having a major boomer moment there. 2 of you guys, Rose Wrist, Fanatic, you stopped moving on my screen, so I was trying to fix that. But my statement on systemic racism, I obviously I think racism exists, it's real. But when it comes to questions, particularly around policing, when it comes to questions around how police treat different racial groups and the justice system, I think a lot of the data around that is improperly analyzed and exaggerated for political motivations. And it comes down to a God of the racism argument, or racism of the gap argument. So instead of just analyzing the data further and seeing why these gaps between ethnic groups exist in certain areas, such as police shootings or how they're treated in the criminal justice system, people want to and usually do just fill that gap with racism. And I do think there needs to be a much deeper conversation about that and where these gaps come from. And by filling it with possibly the wrong explanation, we're not actually solving any problems, and we are making the world a worse place because we're never actually getting to the core or the root of what is causing these gaps and what is causing what a lot of people would perceive as injustices.
Okay, floor is open.
All right, I guess we can start with, I think shouldn't take too much time, with what Connor said in terms of the misapplication of systemic racism. I mean, yep, we agree that pretty much with any form of like broadly recognized societal concept, especially one that is at the centerpiece of a political paradigm or is often talked about in mainstream media, they're going to be a wide range of actors, mostly by the basis of this being such a widespread concept, they're going to misapply the concept and use it in contexts where they don't belong or just generally use it improperly. This has occurred with systemic racism, with intersectionality, and with almost about like any broad sort of like social political movement or a concept that becomes very popularized. Although I don't necessarily think this is like a critique against that sort of concept as a whole, unless you're going to make the argument that that concept inherently and necessarily leads to those sorts of misunderstandings. Would you believe in that, or do you just think that, oh, just like most other things that can be misapplied? And if that's the case, then yeah, we agree, but we don't necessarily think that's a critique of the actual concept in itself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm just going to be straight up on this. I think that not analyzing history is one of the great mistakes that we've made. I've had this conversation with Lauren, on stream, off stream. Basically, I think to not acknowledge like intergenerational wealth and how that's worked is one of the things that's kind of like lacking from our understanding of the situation. We look at like 1865, that's when the slaves were freed. We look at 1964, 1965, that's when the Civil Rights Act went into effect, and that's one of the primary drivers. The issue though is kind of like where we bear down on the details, and I think that's kind of like where the objections are coming from. So,
Well,
Lauren, you want to?
I was going to
Go
say,
ahead, buddy.
really quickly, I think it's funny because whenever you say Lauren, I'm always thinking you're talking to me because my name is Lauren. But anyway.
Great name. Great name.
Anyway, it is. It's a great name. Spelled a little differently, though. Anyway, so when it comes to like the data, I think like looking at trying to say that we maybe haven't addressed some of the prescriptions or used the data appropriately, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Well, I guess maybe it is true. I might agree with you, but maybe not for the same reasons. I do believe that we have plenty of data that kind of demonstrates exactly the claims being made about the current existence of systemic oppression, all the way back to the Kerner Commission in 1967, when they did the Kerner Commission. During that time, they came up with obvious prescriptions that kind of outlined what was causing some of the systemic oppression that was happening and the uprising, the civil uprising that was happening at the time. And I think using that data, the commission came up with underlying reasons that were why this was happening. And those issues were never addressed. Lyndon B. Johnson immediately threw that out. Furthermore, obviously in 94, we see a similar pattern of constantly detailing in data form, really explicatory reports that really show exactly what's happening here, and then we see like an almost immediate a kind of dismissal of the findings there and the issues never being addressed. So we have all of these pattern or practice investigations. We have all of these Department of Justice investigations that are showing all of these reports which clearly detail what exactly the problems are, and those things seem to never be addressed. So I don't know that it's a matter of us misusing the data. I think it's a matter of us just not using the data at all. I mean, it not really showing out.
What is this? What is the study that you were citing at the beginning?
The Kerner Commission. The Kerner Commission. I can link it to you. It was a 432-page report by Lyndon B. Johnson's administration. And
What year did that come out?
1967.
Okay, well, do you think the data may have changed a bit since then?
Sure. So then if we're going to move past that data, the thing is what's really interesting about that is now we have several Department of Justice investigations. There was a Ferguson police investigation by the Department of Justice starting in 2015, ending during Trump's administration in 2017. It found almost identical findings. Likewise, there was a Chicago Police Department investigation as
And I
well.
get the
I can link you both of those.
yeah.
Here we are. Let me see.
So, to be clear, did we does anyone here disagree with any of the five premises of the conclusions that were laid out for the sort of generational wealth, like arguments for the existence of systemic racism? Were there any disagreements or contentions with that?
Connor, did you want to go or?
No, because here's the thing. So this is kind of the thing going into this debate. I don't really care. Kind of talking from my perspective. I don't care what we call it. We can call it systemic racism. We can call it intergenerational poverty. We can call it whatever. Basically, let's just be honest here. Black folk in the United States have had a rough ride. All right, that's basically what we can concede.
Okay, but
Whether or not, no, you go ahead.
I just feel like, getting into, I think we all agree that there's been, of course, shitty, horrible things that have happened to the Black community in America. Slavery, fucking awful. The treatment, not being able to vote, awful. But the conversation is today, data today, is there discrimination in the police force today? So I think that we should leave that conversation for another day and focus on this stuff, or this is going to be like a 4-hour conversation that we never get to the topic in. So I did want a Fanatiq. Fanatiq? Is that how you say it?
Fanatiq. Yeah, that's it. Fanatiq.
Okay. Fanatiq. I did want to, I felt like you were getting to it when you were saying, okay, listen, there's data, we can look at it, it's showing discrimination in these institutions. That's what I certainly want to talk about when it comes to systemic racism. Can we prove this within the institutions we are critiquing in this debate? But I feel like you were being really, really vague. You were just saying, okay, we have this report and this report. What did they find in these reports? Because I've been looking at a lot of data on this stuff too, and I'm finding a lot of reports that are saying the opposite. So I would like to hear what the actual findings were of these reports.
Well, sure. It's a pretty long report, but I did actually take out a few
just spark notes.
Yeah, for things that I think are pretty poignant right now that would that kind of apply to this discussion particularly. I'll read a few of them off. These are all direct quotes from this one is from the Ferguson Police Department report from the Department of Justice investigation in 2015. Mm-hmm. The city's emphasis on revenue generation has a profound effect on FPD's approach to law enforcement. Patrol assignments and schedules are geared towards aggressive enforcement of Ferguson's municipal code with insufficient thought given to whether enforcement strategies promote public safety or unnecessarily undermine community trust and cooperation. Officer evaluations and promotions depend to an inordinate degree on productivity, meaning the number of citations issued. Partly as a consequence of city and FPD priorities, many officers appear to see some residents, especially those who live in Ferguson's predominantly African American neighborhoods, less as constituents to be protected than as potential offenders and sources of revenue. Ferguson's approach to law enforcement both reflects and reinforces racial bias, including stereotyping. The harms of Ferguson's police and court practices are borne disproportionately by African Americans, and there is evidence that this is due in part to intentional discrimination on the basis of race. Ferguson's law.
This is the study from the 60s?
No, this is the one from the 2015.
Yes, to be clear, the reason why the 60 study was brought up is because it's being used to illustrate the fact that this has been like a continually demonstrated thing since the 60s. But yeah, go on, Fanatiq.
Absolutely. Okay. And then here's where the numbers start coming in. Ferguson's law enforcement practices overwhelmingly impact African Americans. Data collected by the Ferguson's Police Department from 2012 to 2014 show that African Americans account for 85% of vehicle stops, 90% of citations, and 93% of arrests made by FPD officers, despite comprising only 67% of Ferguson's population. African Americans are more than twice as likely as white drivers to be searched during vehicle stops, even after controlling for non-race-based variables such as the reason the vehicle stop was initiated, but are found in possession of contraband 26% less often than white drivers, suggesting officers are impermissibly considering race as a factor when determining whether to search.
Wait, did you say that they control for criminality in that?
Well, they control for criminality, but first off, the portion that's specifically talking about police stops, they're controlling for, I guess they control for the reason that the stop occurred. Because if you're stopping someone because a taillight is out, you don't necessarily need a police search, right? If you're stopping someone for even speeding, you don't need to search a vehicle. And so even when you control for the various reasons that you will stop, you still find this disproportionate searching of black vehicles, despite the fact that blacks are 26% less likely to carry contraband. And it would be one thing if over time we were able to determine, because we've seen these kind of patterns happen all throughout the country. It'd be one thing if we were seeing some sort of pattern and then we would be able to justify it by saying, well, even though they're searching them more, they're finding more contraband such that this should be allowable. But the fact that they're finding less contraband and continuing to do so, regardless of what they're stopping for, indicates, I think, a pretty sound argument that there's a racial bias that's contributing to these stops.
Okay, so I will want to look into that study a bit more, and I may even bring it up during when there's a bit more of a conversation between maybe Connor and someone else. But I do want to know a bit more of, like, does it control for hit rates? So does it show you the hit rate difference between ethnicity? So when they do a stop and search, do they find contraband? Do they find like weapons, whatever it may be, based on the search? Because it's not necessarily if their hit rate matches up with the stop and search. So if they stop a certain ethnicity of criminal more or less, but the hit rate of actually finding criminality in that stop and search is even with how much they are doing it, like, that's a significant factor as well. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer that right now.
Well, I thought that was
and also, like,
in the sentence where it says it says it where it
okay,
says,
so you said they're less likely to carry contraband.
yeah, it says
25%?
26.
Okay, I need to bring up the study and look at it.
Sure.
Just
In
because I've
addition
got
to
a
this-
lot of studies here that say the opposite, so I want to understand your study, but I think I'm gonna have to look at it.
But
Okay,
we
yeah.
can
If you
take this
bring
into
it
a
up.
more productive like direction as well, instead of like reading studies and nitpicking them like back and forth like that. So what we could potentially do in this is that so at your opening statement, Lauren, you implied that, you know, the current data and the current you know, sort of, I suppose, understandings as for why these racial gaps exist isn't really the real ones. And I think you said something along the lines of it's distracting from what is really causing these gaps. So according to you, what do you think is accounting for the vast amount of gaps when it comes to wealth, when it comes to, you know, criminal justice outcomes, when it comes to arrests, when it comes to crime rate, and the rest of this?
I didn't come to this debate to talk about wealth differences. Of course, that impacts, like, whether someone behaves in a criminal way. Like, being in an impoverished area is going to impact your drug use. It is going to impact criminality in the area, all of these things. But from my understanding, the question of this debate isn't, is there systemic racism across the world or in America? The question is about the police in particular, because we are discussing Black Lives Matter and police reform. So is there systemic racism in the police?
Right.
And if we can answer that question, then we can decide whether Black Lives Matter have taken appropriate action. Then we can decide whether we need to reform the police in certain ways or not. So we have to prove and discuss whether there's systemic racism in the police. And, you know, what I think in a lot of cases happens is we do see higher criminality amongst Blacks, and that can be for various reasons. You know, impoverished neighborhoods, historical racism, whatever you guys want to analyze that as being caused by. But necessarily, that is going to mean police are going to respond more to crime in Black neighborhoods. That means they're going to have more interactions with Black people in America. And usually the data that comes out saying there are racial disparities in how police address communities is because of that racism of the gaps argument, which is, oh, they are arresting Blacks 30% more. Well, that must be racism. And then what is ignored is the criminality factor. There's a lot of studies that do not control for criminality, which is they're committing more crime, so they're interacting with the police more.
But that point, I think.
Can I get something in here before we talk
ahead.
specifically about the policing debate? Okay, so perfect. So just to be perfectly clear then, we're all on the same page in regard to the fact that there was very significant and massive discrimination against Black Americans in the past, and this today has currently, like exacerbated and carried with it large generational wealth gaps that disadvantage Black Americans, more predominantly than others. And as an effect of them having lower wealth on average levels than white people, they face a wide set of different disadvantages in society compared to the average white person. We can all agree, we're all on the same page on that?
Sure, but to me that's irrelevant to the question of whether the police are deliberately discriminating against one racial group or the other, or deliberately shooting one racial group or the other. It's completely irrelevant to that question. That is relevant to how we solve problems, and that is relevant to how we stop, perhaps, police having so many interactions with this community. But that's not relevant to the question of whether the police are systemically racist, which is what we need to answer before getting on to BLM and police reform.
Okay, so if we're
Yeah,
gonna
can I-
wait really
can I
quickly, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, to expand this, so we can kind of understand each other. Basically, what I would say is like, so I read the summary of the report for the Ferguson Police Department, and I understand what's going on. Basically what my understanding of that system is, basically they were treating their citizens like ATMs. Basically, what was going on, they didn't have they didn't have a lot of city revenue, they didn't have a lot of taxes, they didn't have a lot of basically, like, their millage rates weren't high enough to sustain city government and all that kind of stuff. So as a result, they basically treated their citizens like, oh well, we'll just fucking walk down the street and slap people with fines, and that's where we'll get our money, not just to fund the police department but also to fund the city. And that's kind of where the differentiation and variables here is kind of like, where do we first address that problem? So is it law enforcement? Because if you look at the average beat cop or whatever, the average beat cop who's being ordered, like, hey, city's low on funds, like all that kind of stuff, like we have to do tickets there, we know that there's violators out there, find them, cite the fines. Do we address that at the police administration level? Do we address that at the municipal level? Where's the variable that we specifically address in order to fix this issue? So across the board, law enforcement isn't perpetuating these like hyper negative behaviors that they themselves might not be able to stop. Because if you were to ask like a patrol cop, like, hey, the option for a patrol cop is clear. If you show up into that police department and they're like, hey, you need to cite fines, and you're like, I think this is fucked up. The options are quit. That's one option. Or basically participate in the fucked up system. And I think that's the question, is like, where is that variable and how do we address that variable?
I think the way that they address the variable, first off, before you can even address something, you have to recognize that it's happening. So in this case, I think they're very clearly laying out there is racial discrimination, and that some of these discrimination is literally, it's just racially driven. And so I think but there are problems at all of these different levels, right? So there's problems at the municipal level, but there's problems in the court system. There's problems with individual actors. But just to be clear, when we're talking about systemic racism within policing specifically, right? Because we're not talking about all the other various ones in education and banking or whatever. We're just talking specifically about policing now. When it comes to that, like, I think some of the prescriptions are going to be found in various reforms. But before we can discuss the reforms, we need to be able to say, like, specifically, this is something that's happening, it's racially motivated, and we need to create some sort of system, which a lot of times what they'll end up doing is consent decrees or things like that in order to end up pushing back against some of these things. But this racism that we're talking about can exist even without specifically bad actors. Some of the things put in place will continue even if all of the officers themselves decided not to be racist, to be good acting individuals. The systems in place are discriminatory. And I think that's part of the problem.
Let me ask, if, I think there are probably a lot of other factors to that driving and pullover study. That I was just looking at a study published in 2005, talking about how, the types of driving that different groups in different neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods versus wealthy neighborhoods, driving and the type of driving you take part in, and whether someone is in a seatbelt, whether there's a booster seat in the car, all of these things have a far higher impact on whether someone is going to be pulled over than their ethnic background. But are
you familiar with the nature study that?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to let's just accept that that is true, that it is racism that is impacting why police are pulling Black people over more than other ethnic groups. Would you accept that it is also racism from the police that white people are shot and killed at a higher rate than Black people?
One, I don't believe that to be the case. Two, I just want to make sure that we're reading this sentence appropriately, because it seems like we're going down this road where the sentence clearly demonstrates. It says African Americans are more than twice as likely as white drivers to be searched during vehicle stops, even after controlling for non-race-based variables such as the reason the vehicle stop was initiated. So I think trying to like analyze things or introduce these unfounded variables, like maybe it's because they're not wearing seatbelts, or maybe it's because they're wearing boosters. I mean, they're using booster seats, or any of these other variables are already controlled for in this study, and they still come up with this 26% disparity. And it's really interesting.
What variables were adjusted for matters, because I have a study. I'll tell you the name of it right now. Police officers' decision-making and discretion, forming suspicion and making a stop, 2005, Alpert, Dunham, Stronham, Benham, McDonald, and it comes to the conclusion the officers stop individuals under suspicion 59% of the time, but the suspect's race did not affect the outcome of the stop.
Lauren, are you familiar with the Nature study that draws comparisons between the arrest rates of black and white drivers during nighttime and during daytime, when it's possible for the police officer to discern the race of the driver of the given vehicle?
No.
Okay, so what that study, I will link it to you in just a minute. What the study basically comes down to is that when it is bright outside and the police officers are able to discern the race of the driver, there is a very large discrepancy between the pullover rate of black and white Americans. You know, obviously, more black Americans are pulled over. But upon nighttime, when it becomes harder for police officers to discern the race of the drivers, that discrepancy shrinks massively. So then, like, regardless of like the broader trends that may exist within the behaviors of like black or white, drivers and vehicles, unless there is some reason that would change, that behavior from like occurring significantly differently depending on if it's night or day, we can still prove from that specific example that there is a disparate treatment depending on whether or not the police officer can discern the race of the driver in that instance. I also want to ask you one more thing, because you said something previously. The white people are killed at higher rates than black Americans. Do you mean that more white people are killed, or do you mean that per capita, like as a rate, they're killed more often?
With adjusting for population, adjusting for armed and not armed, in confrontation with police, white people are significantly more likely to be killed than black people. And I'm happy to bring up the studies, but I do want to address that Nature study quickly. Yeah, I will. So that Nature study, was that based on an Oakland study by chance?
I don't believe it was Oakland. Hold on, let me
check that, because I know that Oakland study, in the case of the Oakland data, our approach yields little evidence of racial profiling, and our sensitivity analysis suggests
it's not Oakland.
That the departures. No? Okay, can you send me that? Because I did look through a bunch of these studies, and I think that
Oakland doesn't. Oakland appear once.
Yeah, send that over, and then I'll send you over my.
It's as a citation.
Okay, thank you.
So there you
go. Open that. But so you asked about the shooting rates of white versus black in confrontation with police, and you want the studies for that?
I see. Okay, I got it. So I have a question. Why is it shooting rates and not just overall rates of like killings of like officers against civilians?
It's actually both. Whether they are shot or killed, it's white people will be found to be higher in those categories when even when you adjust for criminality, population size, and whether they have a weapon or not, and what type of interaction, white people are far more likely. And they've tested this in different ways too. Have you heard of James 2016?
Wait, but if you're not talking about per capita, if you're not talking about per capita, then this almost means nothing, because obviously.
No, I just said it's adjusted for per capita. It's adjusted.
I think we can leave this for now. If you link this, we can take a look at it while we do other stuff, and then we can move on for the minute.
So I just want, because you guys just made a strong assertion that black people are significantly more likely to be pulled over by cops. I need to look at that, but I think that most of this debate actually comes from shootings and police brutality, and I think that probably would be more significant data to look at right now.
I have the perfect data
here, Lauren, against what you guys are saying. So James 2016 study done in Texas found that police officers took 1.09 seconds to shoot an armed and aggressive white suspect and 1.32 seconds to shoot a similar black suspect. So this one, they did a real world version of this too. So this one, they did a simulation where cops would have to deal with the criminal, and they would have they would be put in a circumstance where they weren't sure if the criminal was going to draw a weapon on them. It was going to be a violent, bad interaction. And every time the cops were tested, they would shoot the white criminal before and faster than they would shoot the black criminal. They also found that 14% of non-aggressing white suspects were shot compared to 1% of non-aggressing black suspects. And then to confirm this in a real world scenario, you have Worrell et al. 2020, who found that black suspects were 33% less likely than white suspects to have a gun drawn on them by the Dallas police force. So I would consider that a much more significant interaction with the police being pulled over.
It's not.
Having a gun drawn on you, being
It's not.
shot.
It's not, because this is
I
a different
don't know.
conversation.
I'd rather be pulled over than be shot.
So this is a different. This
That's
is a
just
different.
me.
Okay, got you. That's a different conversation, right? Because what you're doing is moving the goalposts. Because the conversation typically, it's not just about specifically killing. The conversation typically revolves around brutality. Because not all killing, I mean, not all brutality results in a death. More often than not, brutality doesn't result in a death. So simply, like, that's typically where the conversation is framed around. And when we're talking about systemic racism, it doesn't have to be specifically confined to killing. Systemic racism can be what was found in things like stop and frisk, and the vast majority of stop and frisk cases didn't result in death. So, like, you're framing the conversation about systemic racism as if we have to be specifically confined to killings, when that's not the case. Secondly, regarding that specific study you're talking about with the 1.32 seconds, I don't think that it's accurate to, like, point out to something where people are doing simulations and then
I just said there was a real life study that confirmed.
Well, the first thing you mentioned was a simulation, and so regarding that simulation, the reason why I think that in itself is not anything conclusive is because in a situation where you're able to be prepared, and you're under the idea that you're going to be analyzed, you go in there with a different perspective. There's a whole different thing that you're encountering when you're dealing with fight or flight. During the times when you're dealing with fight or flight, or where your actual biases are going to matter, and so if you start looking at the data,
I gave you a real life study.
So if you start looking at the data beyond stimulations, and you start looking at the actual data regarding actual, like, just the vast majority of police killings, then they haven't tested for that. There isn't a test that directly shows that there's a difference, or 1.32 seconds. They haven't tested for that in that case. And I think, looking at stimulations, it's not going to do it.
We don't need to just go for it, Connor. You haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So I'm actually gonna rip open a can of worms instead of assisting in any way. So prepare for me to just make things worse, not better. So basically, what I would say is that there is a real concern as a law enforcement officer that I think is subconscious, that basically has bled over into reality, which is basically that it looks, white cop shooting a black suspect. You basically know at this point, if there's any contention over the situation and the variables, you're going to be thrust into the media limelight. As a result, that could be basically reducing your time or increasing your time in order to make a decision. That being said, I would still see that as indicative of, like, a problem, because basically what you're saying is that there is such sensitive, there's a very simplistic, like, legalistic framework for use of force. Basically, when it comes to the use of lethal force, a person has to be a threat of imminent great bodily harm or death to others. Basically, that can be applied to cops, that can be applied to members of the public. But what I would say is that that hesitation, both in training and in in the real world, if it can be corroborated in the real world, is because we all know that this is, like, a hypersensitive subject, where even if there's, like, a good shooting where it's like, literally, I remember in Georgia, there was a black cop who shot a black suspect who had a gun.
That's
and
Micaiah
it was
Bryant,
still,
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Micaiah Bryant was another situation
was that
where,
different? Okay.
it was a different one. It was a male in a parking lot.
Okay.
But then there was also Micaiah Bryant, who was a woman who was in the process of stabbing another woman and was shot right before the incident. And it was still controversial. It was still a part of the Black Lives Matter movement because it's been so heavily narrativized. So I know I didn't help anybody with talking about that. I just opened up the can of worms, but here's the can of worms. I'm gonna hand it back
data
to you.
supports what you're saying. The data absolutely backs what he's saying, in that white people are way more likely to be shot by police than black people. That is just what the CDC data.
And we're still waiting on that data for you to send it to us.
Here, I'll get that for you right now.
Thank you.
Also, I think we can point to the 0.3 second studies, or the 30% specifically localized within Texas studies. However, as the resident researcher on this specific topic, there is an excellent study, one of the most recent ones published in the field, one of the most, comprehensive ones as well, titled "Race and Reasonableness in Police Killing," published by Fagan in the year 2020. I will link this in the Discord right now. You're so glad I brought that study up?
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Excellent. So I can read up some of the key findings from this study. So it's a data analysis on 3,933 killings to examine the intersection of race and reasonableness in police killings. The study finds that across several circumstances of police killings and their objective reasonableness, black suspects are more than twice as likely to be killed by police than are persons of any other racial or ethnic groups, even when there are no obvious circumstances during the encounter that would make the use of deadly force reasonable. They suggest that the addition of training component, and this is policy stuff, so we don't necessarily have to talk about that. It's not relevant right now. So yeah, go for it, Lauren.
Do you know where the data for that comes from?
For the specific study?
Yeah, for the pagan study.
I mean, it says they analyzed like a number of like different like police killings, right?
Yeah, it came from the Washington Post collection of shooting analysis that they had. And the Washington Post shooting analysis, it was so controversial, the numbers that they came together. It has like multiple studies just debunking their gathering of data. So I can send you that. Here's Wiley Online Library, critical assessment of an analysis of a journalistic compendium of citizens killed by police gunfire. So the problem with the data used in the Fagan study is that they studied these people based on unarmed shootings, right? But they decided to include people who had dropped or lost their weapon during the fight with police, which was in some cases, in some years that they analyzed, more than half of the individuals. So they're recording these as unarmed shootings when in reality, a lot of these were armed shootings. They were fighting someone who had attacked them first, but dropped the weapon. And this was massively controversial to the point where, yeah, there had to be a bunch of criminology studies done just to debunk that, what was it, Huffington Post? The Washington Post numbers, yeah, because they were so badly done. And I'd be happy to send you all of the critical analysis of the data they used. Whereas the studies that I'm using when I talk about likelihood of whites versus blacks to be shot by police, like in that Johnson study I just sent you, Johnson 2020, and like in Cesario 2018, that is all using CDC data, National Crime Victim Survey data, reporting from FBI crime data sets, government data on all of these shootings. The first one is fatal, one of them is non-fatal. So when we're talking about debunked Huffington Post studies being used for data that
Washington Post again,
or Washington Post, my bad, they're all the same to me. Well, when we're talking about really poor data versus actual government FBI CDC data, I'm sorry, but I'm going to lean towards the stuff that's solid. I don't think that's unreasonable.
I got you. I love that. And I like your willingness to believe in these specific studies, but it really seems crazy to me because earlier when I was literally citing this Department of Justice investigation, which is an independent party into police departments, you were not willing to accept the abstract given by those studies that were literally during... Okay, so then if you accept that, then that means that you accept the fact that there exists currently racial discrimination within policing that is disproportionately negatively impacting African Americans as found by our Department of Justice. If you accept that.
Listen, I'll accept that, but if you're going to explain that, I'll accept that there is a gap, but if you're going to explain that gap by racism, then I get to explain my gap by racism too. Clearly there is anti-white racism because they are being shot at a higher rate than black people.
Okay, so in this case, this Department of this, it's not that I'm going to explain this gap by racism. It's that within the findings of the thing that I literally read to you, it literally says those words. It specifically says that if I need to, actually, I'll just read it again really quickly. Just
what did they do to study that it was racial bias by the cop? Or is that just the opinion of the person writing the study because they know that's going to help with publication? Well, what did they do to study that it was racial bias by the cop?
So first you said you were going to accept it, and now you're trying your best to dissect every methodology to get it.
That matters.
I understand that
there's a gap is what I said.
I understand that you're asking, but what I'm telling you is that it seems like whereas originally you made the point that you were willing to accept the abstract, now you're questioning the abstract and fighting along the way there. But I'll go ahead and read it really quickly. It says, in every canine bite incident for which racial information is available, the person bitten was African American. City officials have frequently asserted that the harsh and disparate results of Ferguson's law enforcement system.
Whoa, are you saying the dogs are racist?
No.
Or just that they're sticking like...
Oh, wait, Lauren, please, hold on. That sounds like one of the most silly questions I think you would ever ask. You have to understand that the dogs are under control of actual officers, that these are trained...
Okay, so
hold on. Wait, because you said that, so I really have to address this. These are... I got you. It was a ridiculous... I know, but now that you said it, I need to go ahead and address it really quickly, just for everyone listening.
Racist,
of course not. But what it is it would be racist officers who probably have control of the canines. Clearly, these people are... These people,
Exist.
these people are trained. I don't have to know that they're racist. If let me just finish the sentence, and then maybe we'll see if we get a comprehensive idea here. Okay, so what we have is trained canines who are under the control of officers, and we see that they are supposed to be employed and used for specific reasons, and we find that literally 100% of all cases of biting incidents are exclusively against African American in any cases in which we have data. And so I guess the only justification for this that would not be racism would probably be to assume that there has to be something that's present exclusively with African Americans such that they would be receiving the bites. Because otherwise, if anything that happens to be present that would be a justifying or militating factor regarding these bites is present in white people, yet they're not being bitten, then the only justifiable conclusion.
What is the percentage different? What is the effect size of race? What is the race variable there? Like how
I did say 100. I did say 100% because as it reads, in every canine bite incident for which racial information is available, the person bitten was African American. City officials have frequently asserted that the harsh and disparate results of Ferguson's law enforcement system do not indicate problems with police or court practices, but instead reflect a pervasive.
You're saying 100% of people bitten by dogs in Ferguson are black. I'm trying to understand that.
That's what the data
Police
said.
dogs.
That's
by police dogs.
By police dog. That's what the Department of
Okay,
Justice.
I just want the audience.
I am not
to
saying
understand.
that. I'm saying that's what the Department of Justice
Okay,
is saying.
so
Fanatiq, really quickly, can you just read that last sentence because it sounded like Ferguson Police Department was asserting that it wasn't racist for some reason? Could you?
Sure.
Could you just
Okay,
finish that
I
sentence?
will read that, and then I ask that you guys please allow me to just finish reading this one paragraph that I've been trying to and have been being interrupted repeatedly. But I will read it, and then you'll find their retort. So I'm going to start from the beginning. It's very short. It shouldn't take more than a minute. In every canine bite incident for which racial information is available, the person bitten was African American. City officials have frequently asserted that the harsh and disparate results of Ferguson's law enforcement system do not indicate problems with police or court practices, but instead reflect a pervasive lack of personal accountability among certain segments of the community. Our investigation has found that the practices about which area residents have complained are in fact unconstitutional and unduly harsh. But the city's personal responsibility refrain is telling. It reflects many of the same racial stereotypes found in the emails between police and court supervisors. This evidence of bias and stereotyping, together with evidence that Ferguson has long recognized but fails to correct the consistent racial disparities caused by its police and court practices, demonstrates that the discriminatory effect of Ferguson's conduct are driven at least in part by discriminatory intent in violation of the 14th Amendment.
okay, what year was this study again? I need to know the year. I need to know what study this is so I can look at it because I need the audience to understand. It's linked. Okay, I need the audience to understand. Percentages are a terrible way to observe data. So if you're in a town and you have 0 murders one year, and then you have 2 murders that happen over a year span in your town the next year, they're going to say on the news, we've had a 200% increase in murders, and all of the murders are against white people. So let's say 2 white people.
This is a non sequitur,
200%. No. It's important because we need to actually look at the effect size of what racial bias was there. We need to see the difference. We need to see the population size. We need to see
really quickly before
the effect size is what is important in data.
I understand what you're saying, but before you continue to posture, let me make sure that you understand here. It is because the thing that you're talking about to your audience is specifically when we're talking about relative data. Hold on, when we're specifically to talk about relative data. So if this study was trying to say something about an increase in something, then at that point, then you would be able to make the argument that you're making. This is not what happened. Number one, the study took place from the years 2011. I think 2012 to 2014. That's where the data was taken from. But it's not talking about a relative change in data. So that whole thing that you're talking about, relative change, is completely irrelevant. That's not what this is talking about. What it's only talking about is specifically a disparity between 2 different classes of people, and they've gone in depth and looked at the police's own data, and from that they've come to the conclusion that there has to be, and I quote, discriminatory intent in violation of the 14th Amendment from our own Department of Justice, and this study was released during Trump's administration. Just making sure that your audience is clear of that too.
What was the sample size of this study? What was the sample size of this study? Someone tell me what the sample size of this study was.
I mean, I guess I can look for their methodology if you need to.
Because
I'm going to die on that hill until someone tells me the sample size.
I can find it. Give me a minute.
Lauren, you brought up the Cesario study previously. Yep. And I recognize I heard it before. So Ross, and this is just going to be a whole debunking debate, isn't it? But in June 18th of 2020, a series of researchers looked at the way that the people doing the Cesar study were benchmarking their data, and they were doing it not very great. So I'm going to link this right now in the chat, and I'll read out from the abstract of the specific article. So, not article, it's a study as well, published in the same by the same publisher, by the way, that study that published that Cesario one as well. So they have to go through the same publisher that approved the original one. Racial disparities in police use of deadly force against unarmed individuals persist after appropriately benchmarking shooting data on violent crime rates. Cesario et al. Argue that benchmarking the relative counts of killing by police and relative crime rates rather than relative population sizes generates a measure of racial disparity in the use of lethal force that is unbiased by differential crime rates. Their publication, however, lacked any formal derivation showing that their benchmarking methodology has the statistical properties required to establish such a claim. We used the causal model of lethal force by police conditional on relative crime rates implicit in their analyses and proved that their benchmarking methodology does not, in general, remove the bias introduced by crime rate differences. Instead, it creates strong statistical biases that mask true racial disparities, especially in the killing of unarmed non-criminals by police. Reanalysis of their data using formally derived criminality correcting benchmarks show that there is a strong and statistically reliable evidence of anti-black racial disparities in the killing of unarmed Americans by police in 2015 to 2016.
Okay, so if Rosaris, if I understand you correctly, then you're basically saying that the methodology for the shooting stats is skewed, maybe not intentionally, but in a way that they don't respect.
How is it skewed? How, like, I want to understand how it's skewed. Like, what is the skewing being done, just so I can understand? And I know they've written a few responses for that study to people who critiqued the methodology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they did.
Well, Rose, are you saying you understand how they skewed the data, or no?
I can give a brief explanation. Obviously, I'm not.
Yeah, like give me the quick spark notes on how they.
The quick spark notes is that for some reason the way that the Cesario study decided to like adjust for like per capita was not by adjusting for population size. And instead by adjusting for crime rate, which is
no. They did a update of this where they adjusted for population size and they found the same findings. And I'm going to link that right to you. No, they did not.
Was this published after June 18, 2020?
I'll send it here right now.
Was this published after June 18, 2020?
Feel my brain growing already. All right, so I wanted to
Lauren, was it published
I'm checking
after
right
June
now.
18th? Okay.
I'm checking
I'm
right
curious.
now.
Hold on. Just hold the tension, Connor. I know you want to speak.
Yes, it was.
All right, send it my way.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was published December 2020.
So I want to open up a can of worms and then I want to move on. So I'm going to drop another grenade into it. So basically, I would like this to be addressed because I call this the Ben Shapiro argument. Okay. So when it comes to basically, all right. So addressing the dog bites in Ferguson, I think what we're asking for, Fanatiq, is just the raw number.
Yep.
So for instance, when you say like 100%, if 100% is 3 or 2,
thank you.
Then that's that's an interesting number to deal with because 100% sounds more impressive. That doesn't mean that it's not serious. But obviously, we want to know how many dog bites are occurring
and then what's
in
the
city of
population
Ferguson.
of the city of Ferguson by race, right? This stuff matters.
But I'll give you the Ben Shapiro argument so you can address it. So the Ben Shapiro argument that I've heard made in many conservatarian circles is basically that like homicide drives police presence. Okay, that's pretty much true. It's the same thing that I saw that was true in my city. There were poor apartment complexes. There was a traditionally black neighborhood. Those are where the homicides occurred. As a result, law enforcement had a higher presence. Because they had a higher presence, they did more policing there. And obviously, policing in those areas are kind of contentious. So what I'm asking is basically, do you see these as like self-perpetuating cycles in which violence occurs, law enforcement shows up, they're doing the things that they're charged by their city in order to do, and as a result, it's like this cyclical gaggle fuck where crime drives police presence, presence drives certain behaviors, like basically becomes a cycle, never-ending cycle.
Well, I think you do have like a combination of those things. I think yes, homicides can increase police presence. That makes all the sense in the world. Crime would probably increase police presence, but I think when the article goes on to like detail the fact that they're 26% less likely to find contraband and they're still doing these searches unnecessarily, then it seems like actual finding things is not what's driving it. We saw the same thing play out in Stop and Frisk, where they were significantly less likely to find contraband or weapons weapons on African Americans, yet they continue these unconstitutional searches on a regular basis. So yes, if you can show me a correlative increase, like that there's a crime increase and then there's like police presence increase, we would be able to see those things. But like for these studies, like the ones that Rose Rissa already listed, and one that I have now, they tested like 38 different police organizations, and they found these disparate stops using the largest study to date of like all of these different so like when we get these disparate numbers, it'd be one thing to point out, as Lauren Southern has done so far, like, hey, here's a specific like study, like a cherry-picked city, like where they have these findings. But when these things we're talking about, one, we're talking about the Department of Justice pattern or practice investigation, so these things aren't nearly as cherry-picked. One, they're extensive over hold on, and they're going extensive over all these years. And if I need be, I can show you the traffic, the pullover one, which literally goes over. I think I can look it up. I'll find out. I think it's either 28. I want to say 28 different police stations. Here it is. Listen, I'm going to read the summary really quickly. After look. After analyzing 95 million traffic stop records filed by officers with 21 state patrol agencies and 35 municipal police forces from 2011 to 2018, researchers concluded that police stop and search decisions suffer from persistent racial bias. Like, I don't know. How much more data are you? And I guess now you're going to ask me, what's the total number of states?
How are they finding that? What are they doing? I'm still waiting, and I'm not. No, Connor, shut up. I love you, but stop. I still want to know what the sample size for our dog bite study is, because
I don't know that. I don't have it.
Yeah, you don't, because they don't have one. You are giving us literally the sample size could be one person. The population in Ferguson is 70% black, so it actually makes more fucking sense that there would be more dog bites against the black population than the white population in that city. And if the sample size is 1, then it would make sense that 100% of dog bites are against black people. They're literally more likely to just get in an interaction with police, not even based on criminality, just based on population size.
Also,
no,
hold on.
You just said
Buddy, I'm the moderator.
100% of dog bites are against black people, gave me no sample size, just read an article. It could literally be one person.
I'm not reading. Hold on. When I'm not reading an article, I'm reading an actual Department of Justice report, which spanned which spanned over 3 years. Number one. Number two, you're assigning insane amounts of malice to the Department of Justice.
I didn't say it was malice.
You have to be assigning malice to the Department of Justice in order for you to imply that they would intentionally withhold the number of bites in order to construe a narrative, like with something as small as one sample size. There has to be malicious intent there, or it's either that they're incredibly ignorant or they're malicious. Those are the only two possible reasons for why they would do that. But so that's one specific portion, and I'm willing to concede that, since I see that you want to die on that hill. But let's go back to the traffic stops, which they said, and the searches. Let's go back to that information over 3 years, where they found a 26% discrepancy, and they are still finding a disproportionate assessment here. Like, let's talk about those numbers, since we can actually have those data. Or let's talk about this sample size, 95 million traffic stops with insane racial bias here. Let's talk about that over 7 years, over how many different states and how many different municipal police forces. If we really want to get into sample sizes, here's the proof right there in your face. As late as 2018, we saw racial bias.
It's really interesting that you guys want to focus on traffic stops when there are a lot of explanations for that, but when it's really clear, the whole debate with Black Lives Matter is about violence, brutality, and shootings, but you guys don't want to fucking focus on that.
So I've been focusing on that. I've been taking that train down the entire time, Lauren. I've been running that train, and
let's look at your fucking nature study, which ends, we recover a principal finding of Cesario 2019. Racial disparities in the killing of armed suspects by police are proportional to the relative rates of violent criminality. Again, Cesario responded to Ross and found the same results regardless, and his previous paper controlled for crime and population, unlike what you have been asserting
that study you just cited isn't even published, dog. It's a preprint. He also lost the 2 original co-authors. It's not peer-reviewed, it's not published, it's fucking nothing.
Okay, well, that's that.
Let me fucking look at it again, because
it's a preprint. You sent me the preprint. It comes from a website called PS Archive Preprints.
Why does it matter that it's a preprint?
Because it hasn't been peer-reviewed, it hasn't been published. He's also the only author for this, whereas his original.
Why does it matter that he's the only author? Either
Well,
the data
there's
is
even
wrong or
less
it's not.
lie. There's even
You're
less
trying to
eyes in
nitpick
the
whether the
front.
data is wrong and he's presenting or it's not. You're trying
Lauren,
to
It's
nitpick
not
that
even
it's
please,
approved.
wait,
Anyone can do a
Lauren.
goddamn preprint.
Are you dismissing? Are you trying to make an appeal that this one person can be objective? Yet you were willing to dismiss our entire Department of Justice doing civil investigations in the police department. You can't be making this appeal on an unpublished
peer
thing.
review.
Really?
A peer review does not make a study better.
It's not even published yet. It's not pre-reviewed. It's not even fucking published. Okay, there's that. So you know what I'm gonna say?
Listen, either the data is wrong or it isn't.
I'm sorry. I am gonna defer to the most recent piece of academic evidence on this, which is the CODT raw study from 2020. When there is some other, research that actually gets published.
But your claim is that he didn't adjust for population, and he did. And that's why there is a response that he's working on.
It's very difficult for you and I to know that. That's why we have a scientific process, and that's why we have academia, and that's why we have the concept of like the scientific method to prove that for us.
Okay, so if you don't like to argue,
hold on. To be very clear, here's the timeline.
Everybody shut the fuck up.
No, please, Connor, please. I beg.
Holy shit. Okay, all right. Holy fucking shit.
Can I do the timeline?
Hold on. I'm gonna put on my fucking moderator hat.
Okay.
We're gonna do fucking outros on this fucking subject. And we're gonna move the fuck on, and I'm going to go last. Okay, we have 3 subjects to cover. We burned an hour on systemic fucking racism, so let's do outros. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Summarize your perspective. Summarize what you think is correct about your perspective, and then let's move on into the fucking next subject. So, Fanatiq, can you lead us off?
Okay, sure. Let me pull it up. Wow, that was interesting. Well, actually, I'll just go ahead and do this one off the top. Listen, I think there's plenty of data that suggests that there has been an ongoing problem within this country with regard to police. The fact that we've had various acts by different administrations, specifically with the aims of curtailing some of these problems, is very telling. It's not the Kerner Commission isn't the only or the last commission. We've had several. We had Bill Clinton's Policing Act, which specifically armed the Department of Justice with the ability to start investigating the police departments. And what we found, literally, I've not seen a single pattern or practice investigation that hasn't resulted with a conclusion that there is some sort of racial bias within policing. The fact that we would dismiss this much data, there's a plurality of data to suggest these things. The traffic report thing that I talked about with 95 million traffic reports over 7 years, it's one thing when you're saying, okay, what's the data on these dog bites? It's another thing now when I'm saying this is literally the largest study ever done of any kind to this day. If that's not going to tell you, if that's not going to convince you, literally nothing will. I think it's really, really telling when we're willing to dismiss all of the studies, but then we're willing to uphold peer-reviewed things, non-peer-reviewed studies that are supposed to be debunking something with a sole author, but while simultaneously dismissing Department of Justice. If that's not indication of bias, I don't know what is. Finally, I'm going to say this: systemic racism is something that does exist. I do understand with 100% certainty there are plenty of bad actors who misuse this thing such that it becomes vacuous, that it doesn't actually tell the details of exactly what's happening. But without a question, likewise, you have other people on the other side who immediately dismiss any conversations about systemic racism as just, oh, this is just a catch-all and it doesn't really mean anything, while trying to maintain the status quo, which is directly harmful towards African Americans. The data is there. I think that's it.
Okay, Rose Wrist.
All right, so here's a brief timeline of the little kerfuffle back and front. Me and Lauren had her on the side while Fanatiq and Lauren were going at it. So number one, eyesight, they Fagan et al. 2020 study as proof of racial bias in the treatment and the violence of police officers against Black Americans. In response to this, I'm told that the data set is biased. It comes from the Washington Post. I was told I would be provided research for why that data set is biased. Still haven't provided it. It may well be, but I haven't seen anything on it. Thank you very much. Then in response to that, I'm given a counter piece of evidence, which is the Cesario study from 2018, which finds that there's an anti-white bias. In response to this, there is a much more recent June 18, 2020 study published by 3 authors that, discredits and basically debunks the claim made by that original author. And then in response to that, Lauren Southern has linked me a preprint from the head author of the original paper, who now appears to have lost both his co-authors, David D. Johnson and William Terrell, to make this rebuttal. And it's a preprint, hasn't been peer-reviewed, hasn't been published. We, at least I have a faith in like the scientific method as a concept. I'm going to go by the most recent published peer-reviewed piece of data on the topic, which is the CODT Ross study from 2020, which indicates that there is an anti-black bias in regards to this. And I'm still waiting for that. And well, I would be excited to see that Washington piece of evidence illustrating that data set is biased. Now, beyond that, at the end of the day, there is a reason why we very quickly, skedaddled away from the broader argument of the wealth discrepancies and the way that links into criminality. That was hand-waved away at the very beginning of the debate, and instead we're doing this nitpicky, study debunking back and forth, instead of talking about the broader picture of systemic racism in the United States of America and the vast amount of large, comprehensive, and wide-sweeping consequences that has for the people living within it. And yeah, I'll yield my time.
Okay. Lauren?
Yeah, I think there's a reason that you, the audience, have heard Fanatiq and Roserist, well, particularly Fanatiq, mostly read the emotional appeals in these articles and essays and government documents he's bringing up, because he doesn't want to talk about the data. Because at the end of the day, the data is either right or wrong, and he can read emotional appeals all he wants, but you can't show us the numbers for how many people were actually bit by those dogs because they aren't in there. So you can't show us whether this data is actually representative of the general populace, which I highly doubt it is. There's a reason you don't want to talk about the numbers, and there's a reason that you guys don't want to address the other studies I brought forward, like Johnson 2020, which shows the exact same result as Cesario, showed that whites are more likely to be shot. There's a reason you don't want to talk about the studies in Texas that I brought up with simulations, or in real life, Worrell et al. 2020, where 33%, there's a 33% more higher chance that whites are going to have guns drawn on them in interactions with police. There's a reason you guys don't want to talk about those studies, because you were able to nitpick one little thing in that Cesario study, which said, oh, his response isn't quite published yet, so therefore you're wrong, Lauren. And you don't want to actually look at the numbers because they do not support you at the end of the day.
Okay.
So the number was 14, by the way. It was 14.
Hold on.
By the way, that Johnson study was retracted. Just throwing that one out.
These are outros. Per hippie DP rules are all getting muted. Oh, everybody's getting muted. I'm just saying.
It was only retracted because people were misquoting it in saying that it was police deaths and fatal shootings when the study was actually just shootings in general in Johnson. So they only retracted it not because the data was bad, but because people were misquoting it.
Okay.
We'll say that.
Lefties, behave yourselves. Behave yourselves. All right. So I'm going to do my outro, then we're going to move into the next subject. All right. So I think what was interesting about this conversation is because we ended up describing like the supportive analytical data for the narrative of systemic racism. And one of the things, so I understand this wasn't even something that was majorly brought up, but honestly, this is kind of what I thought I was going to be screaming at Fanatiq over tonight. I thought we were going to be screaming at each other over basically the misapplication of systemic racism in society, whether or not we even need to be concerned with it, like all that kind of stuff. And but basically two of the stronger arguments that I heard, which is why I didn't scream at anybody so far, is that systemic racism doesn't necessarily need a conscious evil per a lefty definition, does not need like a conscious intent. There can be systems, laws, historical, wealth inequality, all that kind of stuff that perpetuates through these systems. And as a result, it doesn't take a cop signing up into law enforcement to say, hey, I want to fuck over black people today, and so I'm going to become a cop. That's not, I think 99.9% of the time, that's not what's happening. What is happening is we do have a systems of rules and laws that have brought us into the current situation that we have today, and that's kind of what's going on. So while that wasn't a big part of the debate, that was one of the things that I was appreciative to hear, that like systemic racism from an academic, not a Twitter or a Tumblr definition, is not this like interpersonal malevolent shit. All right, so moving into basically, I have a question to the group, because I really see this going one of two ways. We can either move into protesting and rioting and do intros and outros on that, because basically I see either one of these being a big fucking can of worms that you guys are going to start screaming at each other about, even if we move on to outcomes. So we got to decide which direction we want to go. Protests and riots, I'm assuming that that's going to be a shit show and we're going to fight each other. Whereas solutions, which is something that you don't really hear about on twitch.tv, could be a temporary shit show and then probably actually coming together on some consensus. So do y'all want to go for the fucking Molotov cocktail flame war tonight, or do y'all want to go to the fucking, like, I don't know, being productive on twitch.tv? I know it's unheard of.
We have time for a little bit of both.
Yeah, we might. When you say solutions
if
to
y'all,
what?
basically, what police reform solutions do we actually think would work?
Well, aren't we going to talk about BLM?
Okay, fine. All right.
Yeah, we'll bring that into the protest.
What I heard is I want memeing and creaming. That's what I heard from everybody. So basically, we're gonna do. We're at 9:10 right now. We're gonna run it for 20 to 30 minutes on the riots and the protests. And then basically at 9:40, I'm gonna put the cell phone on my head like a moderator hat, which is basically your cue to shut the fuck up, so we can move into the solutions portion. So maybe we can have a little bit, just a tiny bit, of productivity on twitch.tv. So we started with Fanatiq in the upper, I don't know, whatever fucking hand side that he was in. So Lauren, are you ready to kick us off for protests and riots?
Yeah, I mean, with BLM, as a conservative, I should really support them, because no one has done more for conservative causes than Black Lives Matter. They have massively increased the support for police. They have massively reduced the support for their own leftist ideology and defund the police. And, you know, the only reason that I wouldn't support them is because I'm not necessarily an accelerationist and I don't really believe in political violence. And Black Lives Matter has been entirely animated the last few years by political violence and destruction of of America.
All right. Rose.
Do you want to start on this one, Fanatiq, or how do you want to do this? Or should I?
Sure, you go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so basically when you talk about the role of Black Lives Matter and the protesting and and the rest of it and the more like violent side of stuff as well, there is a very multifaceted discussion to what exactly influences public opinion on the towards like the issues of racism within criminal justice, racism within policing, and just general like public opinions of organizations such as Black Lives Matter. But there are a few things we can say for a fact. We can say that during unprecedented amounts of protests and public gathering that were fundamentally set in place in order to protest some form of civil unrest that directly impacted many of the people protesting, a staggering amount of those were completely peaceful. Up towards 93% of them were. In addition to that, the 7%, they're in between, that didn't end up being, peaceful, have a wide range of other variables why that might be. Some of them, probably just turned violent. However, there is evidence to believe and research to indicate that, hey, there can also be a meddling by other forms of like institutions. There has been evidence by several federal judiciaries and arms of the government, a lot of them appointed by Trump, in fact, that there have been a number of far-right agitators that have produced a number of the initial agitation that sparked a lot of the initial conflict when it comes to turning a protest from a protest to a riot. In addition to that, there's also probably some percentage of them that are cringy white Antifa kids, and you're cringe if you're one of those people. But yeah, that's the short thing there. I'll hand it over to Fanatiq.
All right, Fanatiq.
Okay. What I was going to say really quickly is I think we all recognize that BLM, the organization, and Black Lives Matter, the movement, are two distinct bodies. Most people using the slogan and even chanting the phrase are completely unaware of like what the organization is. They're not associated with any immediate chapters or with any like specific BLM chapters or anything like that. Many are completely aware just of the organization as a whole. The movement has put pressure into meaningful reform. Consequently, in the wake of widespread protests, Black Lives Matter, the movement, has put pressure that has resulted in meaningful police reform in, like, obviously various states. And I think, so overall, I completely do not affiliate or associate the organization BLM. But being a decentralized organization, I think it makes sense that there are going to be pieces of the movement as a whole that I'm going to agree with, but that some are going to be associated with the nefarious organization. And I think I think all four of us can agree that the organization is trash. And I think we all condemn all violence that's happened under the Black Lives Matter organization, under the movement as a whole. I think we all can understand that that's not generally the idea that we should be moving towards.
All right, cool. No moderator hat. I'll just do my intros out.
I have something to jump in here for, because...
Well, hold on. We're not into opens yet, Lauren. God.
Fine.
All right, hold on. Okay. So my intro for this subject. So basically, what I would say is, just like everybody else, violence bad, right? Protests good. Okay. What I would say though is that our buddy Drew Welty, love him. He's one of my favorite conservative commentators. It's unfortunate that he's not in the panel scene as much anymore. But he looked at the methodology for the 93% survey that was cited very often, and basically found it like methodologically unsound. There wasn't really any citation for, because the quote that's been repeated over and over again is that 93% of Black Lives Matter protests are peaceful, and that a majority of the violence was instituted by law enforcement. At least according to Drew Welty, who I would trust with a lot of things, maybe not my life, but trust with a lot of things. He was saying that the methodology was basically bullshit. That being said, what I would say is it's unfortunate because I think there was a real historical opportunity in the wake of the death of George Floyd for real meaningful police reform. I think Black Lives Matter as a movement had around 70% support. I think that there was a real taste in the country for some kind of police reform, and the people who are often responsible for stoking these tensions had no fucking solutions. All they had was the ability to continue to stoke tensions. And that's what's frustrating, is because I can think off the top of my head about a dozen fucking things that we can do. I'll save some of them for the solutions portion of the panel. But basically, when it comes to like universal body cams, field social workers, better training for law enforcement, de-escalation training, like this, that, the other. And unfortunately for the defund the police movement, these do not include defunding the police. What they do include is basically expanding the roles of social services so they can take on roles that law enforcement has taken. And they also probably take on, instead of defunding the police, modernizing the police as a movement, investing more money, more training, more capacity, more this, more that. And we can get into that in the open. I'll leave that for the open for now. Let's go ahead and kick it.
Right.
So to be clear, the critique of the 93%, is that critiquing the ACLD?
Okay, Rose
numbers
Wrist.
there? Yep.
Listen, you claim to be a progressive, and yet you interrupted a woman.
My bad.
True. Facts.
Can you
I was
link that
about
though,
to-
by the way, so I can take a look at it?
I'm just kidding. I can answer you in a minute, but Lauren, please, you seemed eager. Take it away.
Rose wrist. We've got some trouble here, bud.
All right, let's go. Last time you said there was trouble, there wasn't so much trouble, so we'll see this time.
We'll see.
Maybe
Yeah. So I'll tell you right now. I've watched a few of your videos before this debate, and a lot of people have told me like, Rose wrist, you got to take him seriously. He's no spineless Lance. Like, he looks into the data, he knows what he's talking about, and that's true for the most part from what I've observed. So I am surprised to see you cite that 93% peaceful protest data, because that is, I agree with Connor, and we can go through the methodology of that in a second, because it is dog shit. But I could not believe my ears when I heard you say that there's heavy evidence that right-wingers started these riots, and that maybe there's a small percentage of cringy Antifa kids. That is
not at all what I said.
All right, hold
That's
on.
not what he said.
Okay.
I wrote it down while you were
Okay.
saying it.
Hold
You're
on.
like,
So
there is
I can
evidence
repeat what I
that...
said again.
Okay,
so I can
let's
repeat
do
what I
it.
said again. So
Okay, never mind. Y'all got it.
out of that 7%.
If you didn't mean that, I'm happy to listen.
Sure. Out of that 7%, I think maybe I spoke too fast. I'm fucking tired. I do what I can. But out of those 7%, there's definitely like a portion of those that absolutely are just like flames that ignite among the people that are there protesting, and things get violence, people get agitated, and there ends up being violence. However, out of those 7%, there's also significant evidence to suggest that there was empirically backed interference by a number of far-right organizations that went there in order to agitate the protest. And Fanatiq, you can load up the links, because I know
You
we
just
have them in that
repeated what I
document.
said to you. Like, you literally
hold
just
on,
repeated
because when you
what I
said
said
it,
was crazy to
it
say.
sounded like what you said that I said was that all of those were because of far-right
No, I
agitators.
said,
That is not the
I
case.
specifically, someone can clip
Okay.
this. I specifically said, you said there's a significant portion, and there's evidence for this,
I said there's
and
significant
that
evidence.
there's a small percentage that are probably cringy Antifa kids. That is like literally QAnon tier, Capitol riot, Antifa started the riot, and a small percentage were maybe Trump supporters. People have eyes. They can watch the videos. Are there all of these BLM activists that are actually secretly right-wingers that are going and looting these shops?
And once again, I don't know why you keep using the words like all or most. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that number one, my broadest point, and I would love to see, because I haven't seen this 93% contested, anywhere, which is strange, I guess, because since both of you are aware of it, so feel free to send me a link on that and I'll go through that. My principal claim was that the vast majority of them were peaceful. And there was a small minority, 7%, that were unpeaceful. Out of those 7%, not all of those were just like, oh, like interference free, just something just went off and people got agitated and there ended up being like riots and protesting. Because there is evidence, documented by a wide series of like government and federal agencies that there was like instigation and an influence by a number of like far right agitators at these specific rallies. I just thought that's
like to
important.
what degree?
That's
how
a
many
very difficult
riots were
question.
started
That's a
by
very
far
difficult
righters?
question to answer, and that's why I didn't name any numbers. I just said that it's like important.
You just
to note
asserted that it was a small amount of Antifa, and there's significant evidence that these were started by right-wingers. Dude, that's blue Annan level. Like,
okay,
this
which
is
one of those two
crazy.
statements is correct? Which one of those? That there is significant? Are you contesting that claim that there is significant evidence of far-right agitators? Yes or no?
Yes, I
You're
think that
contesting
I
that
would
claim.
really have to see evidence for that before I
All right.
accepted that
Fire it up,
theory.
Fanatiq.
All right, let me find the study.
Well, can I-
Hit me with it.
Hold on one
Hit
second.
me with it.
Can I get
I
the
cut
93%
half-
rebuttal thing? This is turning into a
Oh,
debunking
yep.
debate so fucking quick. All right.
Okay, can
Grab
can
that
I have like a
thing.
half fucking meme question, since we're entertaining that like far right agitators like probably participated in like making BLM riots worse? Are we allowed to entertain that Antifa started the Capitol riots, or I mean, like, can we just have like this like
if you can
vague
point to
generalization?
like federal
Listen,
investigations and boroughs?
I saw a guy and he was wearing black and he had a hoodie on and he wasn't looking at the cameras and he smashed a window. I think he might have been Antifa. Okay, so
Fucking got me, dude.
All right,
Here's the deal. Like, I can continue to look forward. I definitely have some links, but I think more.
I'm gonna need one. I'm gonna need at least one.
I'll
Okay.
provide it. You do your thing.
That's a
Thank
big
you.
claim.
Thank you. So here's the deal. Like, I look at it and I think, okay, I don't know why we need to really point out what. Okay, it's this. What do you think the cause of the riots was? Can you explain to me why you believe the riots started, or why there were riots at all?
Why I believe riots started from Black
Yes.
Lives Matter?
Or just during the protests in general, or what was the source of those riots?
Can I do this just because I haven't talked
Please,
a lot?
Connor. Yes,
Yeah.
you
okay.
take this away.
Okay. All right. So I'll do my enlightened centrist thing.
Oh no.
Okay. So
don't do that.
I have to because I am am the enlightened centrist. So anyways, so the point is that there are real problems in American society. Okay. Basically, when we talk about like intergenerational wealth, that's obviously a problem. When we talk about material disparity, that's a problem. When we talk about dog shit education, that's a problem. When we talk about like law enforcement, police brutality, those are problems, right? But what's happened, and I think what's frustrating to a lot of conservatives, is that like basically we took all of these problems and then we localized it down to like a single variable, and that variable is police bad, police suck, police are racist, police this, police that. Now I understand that both of y'all are like enlightened liberal progressives who would never condone violence. But it's very frustrating from a conservative or libertarian perspective to basically watch the entire riots and protests. We're seeing areas like
cutting out a lot.
Yeah, you're cutting out,
smash.
man.
God damn it. Jesus' penises. How about that?
Excuse me, my mother is watching this stream
Wow.
Oh, that was bad.
and texting me not to swear.
Sorry, Mrs. Southern. Oh my god. All right. Anyways, so the point being, can you hear me now or no?
Yes.
Okay. So the point being that like the reason why we're so frustrated and the reason why I'm so frustrated is because there were people making excuses for the riots. There were people saying that violence is justified. There were news articles coming out literally saying in defense of rioting. There were justifications for all these awful fucking things. So it's really nice that we come into this debate and we have like two super sensible, super intelligent, well-read lefty progressives who are saying like, hey, we have all this stuff that supports systemic racism and we think that these are the things that need to be addressed and we don't condone violence and all that kind of crap. But like, we're not, this is the baloney of it is like when I hear 93% of them are peaceful and that the rest of it was started by cops, I'm hearing no acceptance that there are basically bad actors. Yeah, no one in this room said that. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
But again, my job is to open up a can of worms and hand it to y'all. So can of worms opened and thrown
Okay,
into the fucking
so
room.
I'm
Wait,
gonna-
can I get to this? I've got some debunking material. I have some more debunking material
Okay.
to go over, and then I'll hand it over to you, Fanatic, just very briefly. I'm gonna link you the some evidence of there being far right, people out of town coming into Tumel and purposefully agitate during the protests. And this isn't a major point. I don't think we need to focus on this specifically because it's not like a larger point or like a cornerstone of any of the arguments we're presenting here. And secondly, the only information I've been provided right now to disprove the 93% claim is a Newsweek article. I'm a bit disappointed about
Okay,
that.
but
But anyway,
I gave you an article specifically because it tells you the methodological problems.
I interrupted Fanatic. Go, Fanatic. Go do your thing. And I'll read this article.
Yeah, read it.
I got
It's a Newsweek article, by the way.
I got kind of lost. So first off, I think we kind of laid this out at the very beginning. So your can of worms, I'm going to take it and shove it right somewhere else. Because to me, the conversation that we're having, we have two people who are here and conversing with two other people, right? So we have two, we're in a conversation. I don't want to be held responsible, nor do I want to try my best to understand the conceptual underpinnings of the brain rot within individuals claiming nonsense Antifa started the Capitol riot or the other things. We all know, I'm pretty sure you would admit, that those are pretty much most of the alt-right extremists that are coming with that ideology. Likewise, if we were to sit here and try to make the assertion that all of the riots were started by Antifa or white accelerationists, that would also be ridiculous. So that's not the conversation we're having here. The conversation we're having here are what are the underlying causes of these riots. Now, we've had, like I said, Kerner Commission and other commissions. We know what normally causes these riots. I'm just wondering if you guys are willing to admit that economic conditions can be part of the cause behind these riots. Do you guys believe? So let's just ask that simply. Do you believe that economic conditions are a large motivating factor behind some of the people that are choosing to riot?
Sure.
I do.
I don't deny that, you're probably more likely to break into a store and steal things in a riot condition if you are impoverished. That makes sense to me. But I really don't like this pivot where suddenly, oh no, we don't want to talk about whether Antifa were involved with the Capitol or right-wingers were involved with starting these riots. We don't want to talk about that anymore. That's not relevant. After you just asserted that and you have refused to show us any
provided you
evidence.
I sent you an
Oh, you
AP
sent it?
article,
All right,
dog.
I'm going to check this. Let's look at it.
Number one,
there's
That's a
virtually
huge
zero
assertion.
evidence.
Wait.
That's
I
massive.
can take over for the right while Lauren reads
right now.
I'm
because
going to
it's a
say
debunking
this
debate.
for the 16th time.
Can I
the
respond?
statement is not that all of those 7% were due to far-right agitators. I was merely trying to add a tiny bit of nuance and context, illustrating that, hey, not necessarily all that's turned into by
I'm not
violence
gonna
are
let you
just
go. You
deal with people.
downplayed Antifa's role by saying a small amount of cringy leftists, and then a significant. There's significant.
Okay, the reason why I said a
right-wingers
small amount
started
is
these
because
riots.
relative to all the leftists there, the violent agitators and Antifa kids would be a minority of the leftists there.
Okay, hold on.
And that's why
Just-
very specifically I made no claims to the amounts and the percentages. I just said, hey, some of this white Antifa kids out of town, some of this far right-wing agitators out of town, some of them
Looking
are
at this
police
article.
initiating the
You go,
violence.
Connor.
It's a
Okay,
combination
appeal-
of the things creating that 7%.
Appeal to hypocrisy and logical consistency. Are you willing to concede that is the right made up of a bunch of neo-Nazi militias and basically people who want to hang their legislators, or is that a fractional percentage of the population that's basically agitating for right-wing beliefs?
Of course, it would be a small percentage. Who
Okay,
said
let me try to
something to the
understand this question.
contrary? That sounds.
I
Wait, hold on,
was
really,
asking,
really
I was asking
quickly.
for consistency.
Oh God, of course. Please. Okay, so you guys are derailing this conversation and beleaguering it by making us start to derail into rabbit holes of nonsense that nobody here has asserted. No one here has asserted that the majority of the Republican Party is anything, or the majority of the right is anything. So I don't know why we need to introduce this. It seems like this is literally just not conducive of an actual conversation. Moving it back to something more of what you were talking about. It sounded like in your opening that you were indicating in some sort of way that we were largely tossing our hands up and just letting the riots and everything happen without any kind of deterrence. And it seemed like you were saying that a lot of us were just embracing that. And someone asked, someone actually, this is in Lauren's chat, but someone asked why aren't we protesting that? And the reason why we don't protest the riots, the reason why I wouldn't go out and protest the riots, is because it seems like we have a pretty competent militarily armed police force that tends to respond to these things and squash them. So there have been 4 14,000 arrests in 49 cities in literally 1 month once the riot starts. 14,000. So because of the fact that there are these arrests, there seems to be a justice department and a justice system that is working to do its job in order to prevent these things from continuing or growing. So because of that, I don't feel a need for myself to stand there. The reason why we protest things like police brutality or unlawful killings, or at least by our ideas, the reason why we protest these things is because there seems to be no accountability for any of those things. I think I had a report regarding the what's it called one more of these DOJ reports for Chicago Police Department. It says the city received over 30,000 complaints of police misconduct during the 5 years preceding our investigation, but fewer than 2% were sustained, resulting in no discipline in 98% of these cases. So that's why people start to become more, there seems to be unrest, because typically in these circumstances it seems like there happens to be no there's no recompense, there's no justice in these cases. Whereas when people burn down buildings, if they catch the individual, I remember there was one of them where they literally tracked down a girl's shirt that she wore to the place that she bought it, to the credit card that she used to find out her identity, to arrest a girl for like setting a building on fire. So like there's justice in these cases, and they're putting forth their resources in doing so in order to make sure that these things are just not like left to the wind. But when it comes to police brutality, when it comes to some of the racial disparities in their treatment, as reported by different commissions, we're still not seeing any justice here. That's why we protest on one and not the other.
Can I jump in here with the whole debunk? Like, I'm actually like really shook by this article that it has nothing in here about far-right people starting any violence at riots. It talks about arrests of 2 Boogaloo boys who were going to travel to Kenosha and wanted to assist overwhelmed law enforcement who were arrested before like doing anything. It talks about, someone calling a black church angrily and using racial slurs. Like, these are just random arrests of far-right people around the topic. Can you show me in this article where it says or shows data that right-wingers have been arrested for starting violence at some of these protests? Because I am genuinely concerned you guys are just making random false claims during this conversation if this isn't backed up. And I think that is a fair concern.
All right, and then just to back up this point, the reason why I think the 93% stat in general is kind of a little bit rough is because I don't even know how you would verify that information. So for instance, like if you were to look at like reported riots versus reported protests or something like that, maybe you can get to the 93% stat. But what was repeatedly asserted in debates, because I was on twitch.tv for 6 months during during this issue, was that violence was often instigated by law enforcement. I don't even know how you would methodologically verify that. Basically, if somebody with like a beer bottle throws it over your shoulder, you don't see the beer bottle hits a cop, they now declare it a riot, and then at that point they disperse the crowd and start basically tear gassing people. Is because you didn't see the beer bottle, is that now a peaceful event? Like this is where I'm saying like there's methodological and like factual assertions that are not, you couldn't even verify them if you wanted to. So while it's a tiny detail, it's a detail I wanted to assert because it's basically something that was said on twitch.tv for the better part of 6 months.
So to be clear, the way that my understanding, at least, that they garnered these evidence is based on the like reports from the specific municipalities and the way that they like record held these. And one of the points that brought up in the Newsweek article is that, well, what if the local municipalities and police departments were too charitable and called some of them like protests when they were really riots? In addition to that, this article also like says, oh, here is 2 examples of like a group of people going and breaking into a store. Why wouldn't this like count as a riot? And then at the very end, it ends with, and then at the very end, it ends with them saying that, well, the only institution that kept a good look on this throughout the entire thing was Fox News. I'm sorry, it's a Newsweek article. The arguments don't seem all too convincing. I'm going to stick to the 93% thing for now.
Fine.
However,
I'll just leave it to the audience. I will let the audience know they considered Chaz a peaceful event. Chaz was a nice.
No, they registered the initial like sort of like scuffle. I don't know. The original scuffle that led to the formation of Chaz as a riot where they like violently seized control of the area, but there is no ongoing riot past that point, right?
Yeah, so the times where there was a break-in in the shops and violence
that happened. Yeah, that's a break-in in the shop. That's not a riot.
So taking over a city street, making it your own, independent zone for your crazy political beliefs, that is considered a
Cringe as
peaceful
fuck.
protest, just so you guys know. And
No, it
throughout the
wasn't.
period that
It was
existed-
registered
so
as a riot.
The very beginning was, and then they considered the rest of Chaz that
Well,
zone
they
all
didn't
peaceful.
count
by
it.
the
They
way,
didn't
guys.
count it as a peaceful protest. They considered it as a riot, and then they didn't count it anymore.
Yeah. So for the entire time that
So they
existed, for the
counted-
entire time a street in Seattle was
So you said
taken
they
over by
counted it
these
as a
people.
peaceful protest. That's not what they did.
Well, they didn't count it as a
at all.
riot, so they didn't.
That
So
doesn't
let's
mean they
see.
counted it as a
Hey.
peaceful
No,
protest.
because the two segments they had that they were measuring was peaceful and riot, and that is one of the big criticisms of this, is they had only these two zones that they were observing. So if there was a mix of things, if police weren't called and it wasn't declared a riot, then they weren't, like Connor was saying, if a beer bottle was thrown at someone, that was not being involved in a protest that ended up being violent. They weren't tracking these incidents that weren't declared large riots by the police, or incidents that the police weren't going to or weren't called to. When we have seen video after video after video, people like
Videos
can
aren't
just look up-
evidence. I'm sorry.
Bro,
Videos
people-
are
Wait,
the
no,
only
no,
evidence.
Let me amend that.
Peaceful, that's
Videos are evidence if you want to find out exactly what happened in that particular video at that time. Videos
people
are not
have eyes. They
evidence
can-
when
they
drawing
can decide
broad
if they think this is
statistical
all peaceful.
claims about the state of like nationwide protest on like a federal level. I'm sorry, in that specific example, it's not evidence to support the claim. And you know what? Hey, if this at the end of the day boils down to I think police were too charitable in like registering and like not enough like protests as riots, then if that's the argument you want to run with, sure, go for it. But I'm gonna stick to the 93%.
Okay.
for now.
Okay.
I
Wait,
have to ask questions. Oh, Fanatic, just really quick.
I haven't spoken in a while, but it's fine.
It's just a question. It's a question. It's a matter of public record. Okay. Fanatic, Chaz, based or cringe?
It's cringe. What?
Okay. The floor recognizes a gentleman from Sweden. Chaz, based or cringe?
Cringe.
Okay. All right. There we go. Fanatic.
All right. So here. What?
I still want
All right.
evidence for my right wingers.
Okay, I
still
got
want
you.
that.
So political.
You
I linked you. Political. Also, I'm sorry. Let me see. The FBI report listed a series of violent acts, including instances of bricks being thrown at police officers in a backpack that contained explosives. But based on CHS, confidential human source canvassing, open source, whatever, partner engagement, and liaison, the Bureau had no evidence that those acts were directly linked to Antifa. But the FBI reports did warn that people associated with a far-right social media group had called for far-right provocateurs to attack federal agents and use automatic weapons against protesters. Politico also reported on Monday that a Department of Homeland Security intelligence note warned law enforcement officials that a white supremacist channel on the encrypted messaging app Telegram encouraged its followers to incite violence to start a race war during the protest. Citing the FBI, it said that 2 days after Floyd's death, the channel incited followers to engage in violence and start the boogaloo, a term used by some violent extremists to refer to the start of a second civil war by shooting in a crowd. One of the messages in the channel called for potential shooters to frame the crowd around you for the violence, the note said, according to Politico. On May 29th, the note said suspected anarchists, extremists, and militia extremists allegedly planned to storm and burn the Minnesota state capitol. NBC News also reported on Monday that Twitter had identified a group posing as Antifa organization calling for violence in the protest as actually being linked to the white supremacist group Identity Evropa. Twitter suspended the account. So the cases were not whatever. We saw the
So what you're telling me is you have no evidence except that
Also,
right-wing
okay, here you go. Here's
The
a
Department of
fucking Telegram
Here is a
post.
.gov article titled "Far-Right Infiltrations and Agitators in George Floyd Protests Indicators of White Supremacy." Here you go. Once again, I don't know why we keep getting bogged down in this.
Because you have provided zero evidence that right-wingers started these riots. Zero.
No.
Or any of them.
haven't said-
Any of them.
Did you listen?
Okay.
Did you hold on? Wait. Lauren, did you listen to the words that I just read where I was explaining?
You
Wait,
said
hold on.
that some
Hold
idiots
on.
made posts on Facebook,
Hold on.
Telegram.
Hold
Do you know
on.
how often
That's
these 4chan
not-
freaks
that's
say
not-
we're going to start a race war when they're eating chicken nuggies in their
Okay.
basement all day? You have no evidence that right-wingers started some of these riots.
So
Zero.
No
I
one.
want solid arrests, something.
No one said. Since I see that you love debating straw men, no one here has claimed that they had to start the riots. But what I am saying is that they were accelerationists, and some of them contributed to the violence. Are you denying that fact?
Who contributed to the violence? What arrests have been made? Other than idiots making stupid posts online, of which both sides do 24/7 and is not good. I don't support it. And sure, that may suggest that there were idiots there, but if there have been no arrests actually made, if there's no people that actually have been proved to start this violence, then this is the exact same as people saying that I heard Antifa making posts online that they should be accelerationists and attack the Capitol. This is no different than that.
Okay, so there's a
Okay,
video. There's a video.
interjection.
Oh God. Okay, good
Cell phone on
moderator. Yeah,
I put it on my head.
not biased at all. Go ahead.
So, okay, so biased, motherfucker. Y'all been talking 70% of the time. What the fuck you talking
I've talked
about?
almost
biased?
nothing during this entire time. I've been reading to try to find the information that she wholly just hand waved. But she made her last statement. She now that she made her statement, it's really ridiculous of you to not let me respond before you invoke this cell phone nonsense. Let me respond since she made her claims so that I can substantiate what I was talking about since she hand waved it as just articles. Can you allow me to do that, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
You can do that in your, hold on. You can do that in your outro.
Jesus. Okay.
Outro. Go ahead, Fanatiq.
Okay. So we're all aware of the guy that was in the freaking umbrella. That we had video evidence that did something that was completely counter to the peaceful protest that was happening, in which he broke all broke the windows to that one building, and then went over there and stood by the police. We have all of that on evidence, and here we have. Let me see. Here's the reporting on it. According to reporting in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the man's actions were so odd that the other rioters in the area paused their own protest to call him out and begin filming. "Are you a effing cop?" Someone can be heard yelling at the man as he disappeared from view. People in St. Paul, including someone saying their former fiance, claim to have identified Umbrella Man as Jacob Peterson, a member of the St. Paul police whose goal would appear to be to exacerbate racial tension and instigate more property damage in order to undermine the legitimacy of the protest against police brutality. However, the St. Paul Police Department issued an unequivocal statement saying the individual was not Peterson and told reporters that Peterson had a complete alibi. "We spoke with his supervisor who was with them. We spoke to his colleagues who were with him," said Steve Linder's public information officer, blah, blah, blah. So the point is, in that case, this is a white accelerationist. Now, I'm not saying he's a police officer. That's not my claim.
What was his name?
We don't know his name, but we know that he was clearly not with the protesters, as they all begged him to stop. They followed and harassed him. He pulled out a weapon threatening them if they continued to follow him. They literally were telling him to stop as it was happening. We have numerous videos. There were other videos where there was a bunch of Antifa kids like literally breaking down windows. We're assuming they're Antifa. They could have been white accelerationists. We don't know, but they were literally begging the people to stop. Then there was also in the case of I want to say.
You know how many times right-wingers
Hey,
tell
all
me
right.
this?
Fucking outros. Sorry, Miss Southern's mom for the swear word. Rose wrist, go.
All right. Super disappointing. The main thing that I wanted to talk about here is that, hey, we all reasonable, enlightened political interlocutors. We all agree violence bad, protest good. However, where I was hoping that we would get some actual like disagreement and have like a substantive conversation on was not the two things I said at the beginning of my opening statement, and rather a differentiation between just a complete condemnation and then shutting your eyes and ending the conversation there, and condemning, but also understanding the root causes behind a lot of the like violence that occurred like as an effect of these like of civil unrest on the basis of disparate treatment against like Black Americans in the United States of America. Fortunately, we didn't get to that, so we got stuck on more debunking shit. So in response to my 93% statistic, I was linked, I will say this once again, a fucking Newsweek article in which the main pieces of evidence are like, hey, here is two specific acts of crime that occurred that had more than one person in it. Why wasn't this characterized as a mob? And then saying that Fox News was the most, reasonable commentator on the whole, on the violence rates among the, among the BLM protesters in the, on the topic, which I think is a little bit silly. Just to clarify for the, I think about 17th billionth time, it is impossible to make any conclusive statements for exactly what percentage or how significant the influences of agitating police officers, just BLM protesters that were there, white Antifa kids, or right-wing agitators were in accounting for the violent outcomes and the riots in and like gatherings that were previously protest. However, we know that there is like individual pieces of evidence, significant ones, in the sense that they prove the point, not that they make up a significant portion of the percentage, because we don't know what the percentages are, that indicate that all of those actors had some role to play in the violence statistics. And my only purpose of providing that was that so we don't say that, oh, all the 7% are just like regular BLM protesters who like spazzed out or whatever. And that's the only thing I was trying to like add to that and provide information to that. But we got unfortunately like bogged down on that throughout the entire debate. So yeah, I mean,
wait, and please
Lauren,
click this, Lauren.
Outros, holy shit.
I know it's an
Lauren.
outro. I'm just asking her to click this link as she reads her outro. Thank you. So you can see.
Why would I read your link while
No,
I
you
give
don't.
my outro?
Okay, it's
I'm
something
not,
that.
I can't read something and give
Okay,
an
we
outro,
got
my
15
friend.
minutes. I have a second debate. Let's go. Lauren, let's go.
All right. I have never been in such a bizarre conversation in my life, other than when I am literally speaking to people who are members of QAnon. Why? Because I'm literally hearing the same things. One, we have video footage of Antifa breaking the doors. Look, they are in black masks. We have identified this man. He's a member of BLM. He's a member of Antifa. We can tell. Oh, were those people breaking in? Perhaps they were Trump supporters. Perhaps they were Antifa. We don't know. You are literally saying the same thing. Perhaps they are white accelerationists. Perhaps they were Antifa. The point at the end of the day is everyone watching this, even if you are left wing, know that the majority of these riots were BLM and Antifa participants. They were left wing riots. And if you can't own that, I don't think we can have a reasonable conversation. No more than you can have a reasonable conversation with a right winger who won't own the fact that right wingers entered the Capitol. Because this is bizarre conspiracy bullshit. And I reject it entirely. And no, we can't just pass on those points and let you make that point and move on, because you're spreading misinformation. And that's really dangerous for discourse. That's really dangerous for the rest of the conversation.
That's really crazy.
I don't need, hold on. I don't need an outro because I'm based in white pilled. Okay. So basically protests good, violence bad. All right. We're going to move into solutions, and I'm going to start with the intros. So basically, one of the things that was really interesting when we first discussed this topic was I was thinking that there was actually consensus for solutions. Maybe we would get bogged down in descriptions, fight over stuff. That's what we've done for the past hour and 45 minutes is fight over the descriptive. I was wondering if there was a way for us to get to the prescriptive. As prescriptive statements for what I think would be good for society, I'm going to try to steal all of your talking points. I think marijuana should be recreational. I think hard drugs should be decriminalized. I think hard drug trafficking should still be prosecuted because basically there's still nefarious things there. I think that it's interesting to look at the Portuguese model as a potential way for the drug war. Drug war is obviously something that's affected a lot of poorer communities over the past 30, 40 years. And then also when we look at our social safety net, I want strong American families, regardless of ethnicity, language, whatever. So I want basically universal pre-K, strong education, strong secondary education, and the ability to get college educated, and a basically universal access to healthcare, whatever is the most efficient model. So I think that by solving the material conditions, which lefties love, could help bring some of these families out of poverty and basically alleviate some of the struggles that they're facing. These are universal programs. They're not race specific. And therefore, that's kind of where I think we need to go. When it comes to law enforcement specifically, I think universal body cams is obviously a good way to go. I think third-party accountability is a good way to go. I think analyzing the way that state attorney's office and law enforcement officers interact with each other is something that we need to take a look at. So I'll yield it, pass it off to Lauren, and then we'll let the lefties go.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd agree with Connor. I'm sorry that you didn't get much time to debate. I was fired up, but you made a great moderator. This almost became a 2v1, but you made some great points. Everyone in the chat is saying you're based right now. But yeah, for my opinion on this, I think that a lot of the problems that we are observing, we are taking them from the wrong. We are observing them wrong. So we're looking at gaps in police treatment. We are looking at gaps in wealth disparity. And we are saying this is absolutely 100% racism. And by looking at it that way and always wanting to say that this is the crisis and fill all those gaps with racism, we are actually ignoring 1,000 different factors at play, including poverty, including absolutely historical racism, historical situations that occurred. But by always asserting it is because everyone in society today is racist, we are actually ignoring real situations that we could solve. And I think the police in a lot of cases with these problems are 5 or 6 cogs down the line and reacting to other problems that are causing these disparities. And we are not going, and the big crisis here is that if we keep trying to address this problem by trying to make cops less racist, when that is not what is actually causing more arrests, when that's not what's causing more shootings, we're just going to keep going in this circular motion. People are going to keep getting frustrated, mad. We're going to have more protests. BLM is going to keep fighting for things that are not helping them at all, that are not leading to an improved society. And it's just going to be absolute social chaos. And I think that is it's really unfortunate that the left have not kept BLM and their violence accountable, have not kept the fake news and fake data and fake prescriptions accountable.
Rose.
Yeah, so when it comes to reforms to specific like policing practices, I think one of the a great bill to tout here for a combination of pretty decent looking police reforms that would be very beneficial is the George Floyd right of crime. Let me hold on. What was it called?
Justice and
George Floyd
Policing
Justice
Act.
and Policing Act. There we go. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which had a series of reforms, which hey, they overall look pretty good. And once again, it's a testament to the fact that hey, like BLM and discussing often the like the racial angle on the police brutality aspects can lead to meaningful police reform that benefits everybody and that benefits like the institution of policing as a whole and that minimizes the instances of incorrect or improper interactions with police for all people that interact with them. Now, Lauren touched a bit on systemic racism stuff at the end of hers. I'm going to touch a little bit on it again. This is the second or third time in this debate that Lauren Southern has alluded to the fact that she doesn't buy the explanations of like systemic racism and disparate treatment in the past as making up the wealth gaps in society at the present. So, for instance, I'm reminded to in the beginning topic when Lauren Southern said, "So when we talk about these wealth disparities or whatever, you guys can talk about systemic racism and discrimination in the past and the stuff that you believe." And then you very conveniently didn't talk about what you believe make up those disparities. And then here, once again, you did kind of the same thing. So what I want Lauren Southern to answer when we go into the open debate stage is Lauren Southern, what do you think the reasons are behind the massive wealth gaps of Black and white Americans in the United States of America? And yeah, I'm going to hand it over
Okay.
to Fanatiq.
Fanatiq.
Yeah, I think the reason why these conversations tend to be so unproductive is because when you have two people here not making claims, but someone here wants to continually posture to their audience as opposed to addressing the things coming out of our mouth. No one here has ever said that literally 100% of all of these problems is exclusively racism, right? Even the Department of Justice document that I read said specifically, in part, racial bias. I think that's where the conversation lies. We can actually trace some of these outcomes to systemic racism, some of them. There's always going to be personal choice, and we're going to have outliers. We're not removing we're not removing personal accountability entirely out of the circumstances. But it seems like some people want to only focus on personal accountability while continuing to ignore or dismantle or dismiss literally any claims of systemic racism and bog you down in beleaguered conversations about specific data or specific claims because they don't actually want to entertain or argue the actual merits of the points made by different studies, different reports, and that's where we're actually having a conflict of interest, where we can't actually have a realistic conversation. Clearly, systemic oppression is still real. She already admitted to that statement. So we know systemic oppression exists. It's whether or not we can actually start trying to quantify what the actual what is actually happening as a result of the systemic oppression. How much of the systemic oppression that has existed and continues to exist counts for the disparity, and that's the problem.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in first in the open. Basically, what I would say is it seems like y'all are gearing up to rip each other's throats out for the next 8 minutes, and that's completely fine. And if you want to do it, we can absolutely do it. I'm going to basically stop us at 57 because y'all wanted to do this. And then I just have a hard out. If y'all want to rip each other's throats out after that, that's fine. But basically what I would say in reference to this is if we wanted to be a little bit more productive, because we have been shit posting for the better part of an hour and 50 minutes, is we could actually focus on the policies that we think we actually agree on. So for instance, Rose, you said that during the George Floyd Act, there was a whole bunch of reforms that you thought were actually positive, that were worthy of implementing and all that kind of stuff. I brought up the reforms to the drug war that I thought were important. I brought up the analysis of the material conditions, which I know lefties love. Sorry, Miss Southern.
Sorry, my chat keeps saying there's a racist dog outside my house. It will not stop barking, so I'm muting myself.
That's probably fucking true. So so basically, Rose, what are the reforms that you think are good or worthy of adoption?
I think pretty much everything in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is pretty good. But before we go into the open panel,
can you describe it for us?
Okay, but before we do that, I very specifically wanted Lauren to answer a question right when we got into the open panel. So Lauren Sutton, I asked you this question. You seem to have indicated that you don't believe systemic racism is the reason behind the massive wealth disparities between Black and white Americans in society today. So I ask you the simple question, why do you think that gap exists? What do you think it's due to?
I find it very funny, first of all, that Fanatiq will do his final statement and be like, some people, when he's clearly talking about me, and you can only refer to me as my full name. Lauren Southern. Like either way, I'm like this inhuman object to both of you that cannot be addressed
All right,
as
answer
just
the question,
normal. Hey, Lauren.
Answer the question,
Lauren. Yeah. So I know what you want me to say. You want me to be like,
No, I don't want you to say anything. Just answer the question.
I know what you want me to say.
Preamble.
I know what you want me to say.
Lord, she's not going to answer the question.
Jeez, am I going to get to? The reason that I didn't address it in the first half is because our debate, in my opinion, was on policing. And we need to discuss whether there's systemic racism in policing. Whereas I think the broader societal context of systemic racism in all other factors of life is such a big conversation. It is such a behemoth of a topic to tackle. It is not going, I'm not going to be able to tell you one factor of why there is a wealth divide.
Give me a handful. Give me just a few.
I'm not going to be able to tell you one factor. You know what I think the largest factor is? I think that one of the largest factors is absolutely a class divide. That's what I think.
Why do you think that class divide exists? Did you think it just erupted spontaneously, or what caused the class divide?
What caused the class divide between
do you think that there were just
blacks and whites in America?
Yeah, exactly. What caused it?
I think there's absolutely like mass historical factors to that. But there's like, for example, modern day factors are having two parents gives you a massive benefit in life.
I get you.
A lot of
Wait, hold on. Let me interject.
Why do black households not have two parents? Well, that's also.
Do you really
Wait,
expect me to solve all of Black America?
No, we're not. No. Let me interject really quick. You said large historical factors can be contributing. So can I ask you, the historical?
I wonder what those large historical factors would be.
What I'm asking you.
Slavery?
Jesus, I haven't asked. Lord have mercy. What's going on? You're incapable of a decent conversation. Chill. I'm asking you, are any of those historical factors still having an impact today?
I don't doubt that they would. Of course, I think that historical factors impact cultures today.
Do you think historical economic factors would be impacting economic?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why would you think I would deny these things unless you think of me as a cartoon character? Like, it's
So
very obvious that historical factors would impact people today. The only difference that I probably have with a lot of left-wingers is I don't just think they affect one group of people. I think that historical factors affect white people as well.
Of course. Now the question is, sure, I grant you that. Yes, I get you. Now I grant you that. Now, are you willing to admit that some of the historical factors, some of the negative historical factors, disproportionately impact blacks living today?
In America, absolutely, of course, because they definitely had a larger degree of racist policy and practice against them in America than other groups, for sure.
Okay, now,
right, so
well, I just want to really quickly. Would you say that systems, for example, like our education system, like you obviously we know redlining from previously it still affects us today. Would you say that our education system being funded by property values, by property taxes, then at that case that schools being underfunded would still be directly impacted by the historic redlining that has happened, that there hasn't been any attenuance for today?
Listen, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that history has no impact on people.
That's the last one. Answer that one.
I'm not going to sit here and sit for your inquisition of.
That's the last question. That's the last question. That's the last question. So that's the final question.
It is the last question because we're running out of time.
I got you. So the final. No. Final question. I just need an answer really quickly. Final question.
Let me ask you something.
Wait, can you answer that last question? You didn't answer. I asked it already. You're gonna not answer my question and then ask me one. Answer my question and then ask me one, and I'll answer whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, of course I think that would impact it. To what degree? I'd probably have to look into the data. I'd probably have to look into the degrees that it impacted. But history, in any case, is going to impact people's futures.
Of course.
Do you think if someone is a white kid and they were born to poor orphan parents, do you think if someone is Irish and they were massively discriminated against when they came to America, that is going to affect them today? And we should talk about problems in the Irish community and their historic oppression.
Well, for one, I would say that the historic oppression of Irish people is not at all equivalent to the historic oppression of African Americans.
I didn't say are they equivalent.
I know.
I didn't ask that.
I'm answering your question. So one, I would say that they're not at all equivalent. So because of that, while I do believe that we probably should focus on the impacts, if we can trace direct impacts towards the harms that have happened to Irish Americans, then we should probably say that we should probably do something to address that. However, what we have noticed is that after Irish Americans received the identity of whiteness, once they began being considered white, at that point, now they started to reap all of the benefits given to white society. The Great New Deal, some of the larger like programs regarding HUD and things like that. All of those programs that were largely
History disappeared and no longer.
No, what I'm saying is
them.
all of the white programs that largely offset most of the atrocious things that happened to impoverished white Americans. The government did numerous programs that largely lifted them up out of the poverty that they were in, such that now they've been able to thrive, and we haven't seen an equivalent thing done to black people. Those things were divided specifically on race. So as a result of that, I say that we obviously see quantifiably we have a great divide that's about 1 in 10. Black wealth is about 1/10 of white wealth. So now we see that we probably need to focus on those who have largely been left out of the largest amount of government programs.
Okay. Moderator hats on. I have a hard out. That's part of the reason why we started late. So basically, what I would like, because basically I feel like we just we tilled a whole bunch of ground. That's kind of what we did for the past 2 hours. Is we didn't really land on anything solid. We kind of like ripped up a bunch of things and kind of left like a lot of points kind of like raw and unfinished. But ultimately, that's kind of the problem when you have these debates. Is like sometimes you don't get to finish your total coherent points. So I want everybody to benefit from this, basically, so right wingers can introduce themselves to left wing audiences, and left wingers have their ability to basically introduce themselves to right wing audiences. So Fanatiq, can you basically? I would like to hold, if y'all want to have a second debate, we can schedule that in the future. So I'd like you to hold content for now and basically shout yourself out where people can find you. So Fanatiq, can you kick us off?
Sure. You can find me at twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatiq, on YouTube, Ask Fanatiq, on Spotify, Tidal, Google Play, Amazon Music, under the name Fanatiq. My latest album was Soundscapes. You should check it out. It's a pretty good, tranquil album. If you're into retro music, check out the album Retro Future. You can, follow my YouTube and just, that's where I'll be.
All right. Thanks for coming out, buddy. Roserus, can you shout yourself out?
Is this closing statements and shouting out, or just shouting out?
If you want to take a closing statement or whatever, then just do 30 seconds. We gotta go.
Incredibly brief one. Yeah. Okay. So hello, my name is Roserist. I'm a progressive political comment creator. Nice. Political content creator and commentator. I have a YouTube channel, Roserist. That's where I put all my stuff. Upload videos every day except for Sundays when I stream. I also stream Tuesdays and Thursdays. Cool stuff all around. I'm just happy that at the end of the day, and as per my understanding, I open up for a yes or a no from the other panelists. We all agree that fundamentally the reasons why there are wealth discrepancies between black and white Americans today in the United States of America have to do with racially disparate treatment in the past. Do we both agree with this? Yes or no? Can I get one from you?
That wasn't what the debate was on, so I don't know why you're concluding with this.
It's really important to me, just personally.
Well, no, it's because you want to.
You don't want to answer the question. That's fine.
No,
whatever. Moving on. No, it's fine. It's my closing statement.
You're trying to make it seem like you want to debate by changing the goalposts.
What is this?
Outros.
All right, thank you.
So, all right, everybody follow Roserist. I think it's very impressive that an international baccalaureate student got his degree, going to a good school. He's bilingual, all that kind of shit. As a matter of fact, it's fucked up that he can talk better English than most of the people on twitch.tv. I think that's fucked up. So thanks, Roserist, for coming out. I appreciate you.
It's not an argument. It's not an argument.
I'm about to kick your ass. What do you want? Let's go.
Lauren, you think immigration is super interesting? I think it is as well. If you ever want to have a discussion about specifically Swedish immigration with a Swede who is educated on the topic, because most of the Swedes who talk about this issue and are left-leaning are fucking really stupid when it comes to it. So if you want to have a conversation about it or a discussion or debate on it anytime, I'm completely open to it. Because
I'll be honest, I don't really give a shit about Swedish immigration. I'll just be real.
Well,
all right.
European as a whole, we can do that as well if you want to, but it's up to you whether or not you want to back up.
All right, all the Euro cucks and Commonwealth cucks chill, okay? Lauren, do your outro.
Okay.
All right. Do you want me to do your outro for you?
You know what? I'll give it to you, Connor. Actually, my outro is I would like everyone to thank Connor for moderating this debate and coming in and being the reasonable centrist, even though all centrists need to be ended. Connor can stay. He can live.
All right, thanks. I look forward to be either center-sided by the far left or the far right and thrown into like whatever like weird cuck gulag and or camp that you guys have. So that'll be fun. So anyways, my name is Counterpoints. I'm centrist center right. I'm a law enforcement veteran, Marine Corps veteran. I'm sorry that I have to run. I feel like we could probably yell at each other for another 2 hours, but if we want to yell at each other for another 2 hours, there's always the future. So I sincerely appreciate y'all. I hope you have an excellent night. Thank you, Fanatiq, for coming out. Thank you, Rose for coming out. Thank you, Lauren, for always being the villain of the day and throwing up your your demon horns in order to fight everybody. I appreciate it, and then look forward to the next one. So I'll catch you.
All right, thanks for coming on, guys. Appreciate it.
Of course, Lauren. Really quickly, Lauren. Do you think that
Wait,
this is a debate. It's not a debate.
This
I'm just
is
asking.
like the Inquisition. You can't leave
I'm
until
not-
you got her. You
this
gotta
is-
bring a head back, because
this
if you
isn't
don't
a-
debate Lauren Southern and absolutely win, then it's over. No,
This
dude,
isn't a gotcha.
We'll
This
talk
is-
another day. We'll talk another day. I don't really give a shit about what you're gonna ask because the debate is over. We've done like 7 outros.
This
and
isn't
I
a
wanna go
debate
have dinner with
question.
my family.
Weirdo. Okay, I got you. You're good.
Okay, well, okay. Is it about completely non-political stuff? We can.
Yes, I was going to ask
Okay,
you, just
all
would
right.
you be available for a 1v1 conversation in the future? That's all I was going to ask.
Wait, you can literally text me that. I'd be happy to. We can
All right.
arrange that.
Okay.
Sorry, man. I
Jesus.
just didn't want to keep. There goes the dog again. I just didn't want to keep the constant outros going. All right. Have a
Okay.
good one,
By the
guys.
way,
I'll
Laura, I find it
arrange it.
disgusting that you've cut me off on the
Bro,
side of your
Connor
screen.
did this.
I think that's
Connor did
very
this. He
rude.
literally
What's going on?
assassinated all of you.
All right, well,
Except Fanatiq, he kept you alive. You're
All
good.
right. All right. Peace out.
Rose is dead. Bye.
all right.
Let me call Rose really quick. Bro,
How are we
she's-
feeling?
I don't know, man. It was that was okay. Like that was a little bit ridiculous. I think, man, I have a problem when it comes.
By the way, if you want, you can turn on your camera if you want to be on my stream as well.
It should be on, isn't it? Oh, it's right. Look, so my biggest problem I have is that, like, for a lot of these conversations, like, because it's a group thing, like, we're having really 2 distinct conversations, and so, like, it's really hard because I have to, like, keep up with what you're doing and then keep up with what I'm doing, and then so, like, if ever I'm trying to pin her, she retreats over to you, and then it's like I jump in to give her back my point, and then she leaves your point. So then it's like, so then by the time we're done, we're not really having a genuine, like, we can't really pin a point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely felt that, and I was like worried, like on how I was gonna like run it, because I felt that sometimes like it was rough because like I had to like to interrupt at certain points and get the thing in before we moved on too far, because it was like important stuff after what she was talking about. But yeah, it was definitely like 2 separate discussions that were being had
Right.
at most of the point during the debate. I think we did like fairly well in both 2 separate discussions.
For sure.
Then there's a question of like I wish Connor would have debated, man. Because it feels kind of it feels silly that it was, and even Lauren said this obviously because it's beneficial to her, that it was framed like as like a 2v1 at the very end, which is
Right.
not what we signed up for at all, right?
Exactly.
So that's a bit unfortunate, but I think overall we did pretty well. I just did a bunch of fucking debunking during the entire
Yeah.
fucking debate.
Dude, I feel like, look, here's the deal. Like, for her side, I don't think there's a genuine, like, actual debate. Like, really what it really boiled down to for her was she was just basically dismissing every report, every study, asking for, like, all the nuances, right? And to be honest with you, if we're going to have a debate, right, where it's like we're going to get into, like, the specifics. Okay, no, tell me the methodology. What exactly was a sample? When you get into that, like, you're not really having a genuine conversation about the broader topic. We should have had a full-on debate about that one specific study, like, right? Like, that's what we could have done. If need be, which is, I guess maybe I should have just gave her the study beforehand and had her read up on it. But yeah, like I think like her disregard for data is absolutely ridiculous, while clinging on to like the importance of the data that she had from her side, where it's like, oh, this study, which only has one author, which hasn't been peer reviewed, like this study is very good to debunk this other study, which and it's like all of that, and it's just like, okay, while simultaneously saying your Department of Justice study was biased, and these people were like intentionally withholding the net data in order to try to tell a better story. It's just like, what the frick are you doing? Like, it's just so dishonest.
Yeah, it's very. I don't think Yeah, I think it was like the first time she called me, I was like, oh, I'm so happy, bro. I was like, wait, fuck, have I missed something? And then I took a minute, and I was like, oh shit, I should take a minute to take a look at this, and I probably took a look at it, and I'm very happy with the outcomes there anyway. So it was decent. I think we did an okay job with like, especially there at the end. I think that the last 15 minutes from us were really good.
Yeah.
Where we tried to like ask specific questions, and it was so fucking obvious she didn't want to answer the questions.
Of course, bro. She was running.
Excruciating me up.
She spent like 5 minutes like talking about what the question is and why she might not want to answer. It was, what the frick?
Yeah.
Oh my
It was it was
lord!
it was it was ridiculous. I think it was pretty good. I mean,
For
we got
sure.
our point across there.
I think
And you
that
know
that's
what? I just
enough.
have to say, hey, it's a shame that that Lauren Southern doesn't share the same interest for Swedish immigration now that she did 2 or 3 years ago.
Right, right.
So
Because wasn't that her bag?
unfortunate. Yeah, it was Sweden and Germany that was her key things.
And now she
But
says she
oh,
doesn't give
now
a.
Sweden. No, well, there's a Swedish debater here. I never really cared about Sweden in the first place, you know.
Yeah, it's
Oh
crazy.
my, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think. Hey, listen, she did admit at least that there is like, although like it was like mired by a whole bunch of other nonsense. She did at least admit that systemic oppression does exist today, and that it's still impacting people today. Now, the question about to what degree? I mean, that's an interesting question. But she did admit systemic oppression does exist, and it's impacting people today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we kind of like she tried to dodge that at the very beginning, and I didn't want to get stuck in the fucking debunking shit because number one, it's boring, and number two, I'm always correct. But like it was just like it was a fucking it's not fun. I want to have the broad discussions, and like I don't know how you're gonna take does systemic racism exist and then like fold it a million ways and try to get into let's specifically talk about police action, not criminal justice, not overall economics, not the effects that can have on the previously two discussed topics. Like it's just it was very one dimensional, dude. It
Oh
was
yeah.
yeah, it was a shame, but
Yeah, it was good though. Listen, it was a good first attempt. She'll be one. Okay, she'll be one if she has a genuine 1v1 conversation.
yep,
It's just
I found a
it's
it got
difficult, bro. It's difficult because again, like with Connor kept throwing in like just nonsense, bro. It'd be like, hey, I'm just gonna here's a can of worms I'm gonna throw at you, and each time it was like something completely irrelevant and like, yet we're not addressing that, bro. Like, come on, man. It was
uh,
wild.
yeah, it was very silly. I'm happy now that I found an article in the Guardian where she's making statements
Swedish
about
immigration.
Sweden when it comes to demographic replacement. Article from
Uh-huh.
5 months ago, by the way. So
Jeez.
yeah, I'll have to probably maybe grill her on Twitter for
She
that
doesn't
a
care
little bit
about
later.
Sweden, bro.
What?
She doesn't care about Sweden. Remember?
Yeah, I guess
I mean,
she
it's
doesn't
been a
care,
whole
bro.
5 months, bro. You understand? Like,
Yeah, it's
you
been
can
the
make a
last
baby in
five
that
months.
amount of time, huh?
Jesus Christ.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's
Ah.
indeed. All right, man. Look, I appreciate it. That was pretty good, though. Even still. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was
bro.
decent.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's a few like again like the statements that she was at least willing to admit to. I think those were good. And that's good. Like just getting those statements in there where it's like okay, well, I mean obviously she wants to qualify them, but she made the statements. That's enough for me. That was the win.
Mhm.
If
Yeah,
we
I guess.
have a 1v1 conversation on just systemic oppression, because I think fitting three topics in was kind of hard, especially if we know now that she's going to be like a data lord. I think if we were like to have a genuine conversation, I think like on one topic, she would have to get bodied.
Yeah, so hold on. Someone's saying in chat, would it be good if you debunked the one post-publication edit that she mentioned that allegedly addressed the problem? Oh, you're talking about the one that got like revoked? Oh yeah, I thought you were talking about the music one for a second, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. What I do think we did very well is that there was a good balance between like you doing the more like I suppose like broad like arguments from wide ranging stuff when it comes to stuff like this because systemic racism is a wide ranging object, and then on the side there was like a parallel discourse with me running down more of the debunking study, the small empirical side of stuff. That way we got like a good like spread of both of them, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that 1v1 debate is like every time I do a 2v2 debate, I'm like, oh, next time will be better. Next time it won't be as bad. But like there's always like inherent problems with 2v2 debates.
100% every time, bro.
Make it very difficult.
Literally every time. But again, dude, this isn't as bad as one. There was one man where it was awful, and like the person just kept going down complete rabbit holes that I did not want to go down, and I'm like, bro, please. And it was that was awful. But this wasn't that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was good.
Um. Yeah, that was great. That was. I think we did a we did a good job there. But yeah, fuck, dude. Goddamn, it's such a shame that she has never cared about Sweden. Otherwise, that final request would have been really good. But unfortunately, I was just completely wrong about her caring about Sweden.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're just 5 months too late, bro. Because if you asked her
Yeah,
before, then she obviously cared.
my bad, bro. My bad. Um,
you gotta get with the times, man.
yeah, man, I'm fucking sorry, dude. Shit. All right. Yeah, but I think I have to. I'm gonna do a bit more research, just hang out with chat for a bit. I think probably then I have to head to fucking bed because I wasn't able to take a nap. I've been
Okay.
running this show, fucking no sleep.
For
But
sure,
you know what it is.
man. It was a good talk, though.
Um,
Really, it really was good.
yeah,
I'm
man,
glad
that was
that I'm
good.
glad I picked you. That was amazing.
Yeah, man,
I'd do it
happy
again.
to. Happy you invited me. By the way, that was like incredible. Like I woke up, it was gonna be the day. I was like, oh, I'm moving. You know, it's a big day. I'm excited and stuff like that. What could make this day any better? Bang! Lauren Southern debate. Fuck yeah, you know.
Yeah,
You
listen,
good.
because I didn't know how the debate was going to be. I thought it was just going to be in systemic oppression at first, and if it would have been, then like I would like 90% of what I use whenever I do those debates is your article, right? Like your document, whatever. So it was like if I can do it, and they said it was going to be 2v2, and I'm like, if I'm going to be using this thing, I should probably have the person who made it. Like, you know what I mean? That'd be sick.
Mhm.
I've always
Yeah,
been
yeah,
such a
exactly.
huge fan. All right, man.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, to be fair, I think I was a bit annoyed with the like how it went with the topic like selections or with the stances. Like, wait, is that group? Bro, they already deleted the group chat. What the fuck?
really?
I can't even look at the sources. No. Why?
I'm
That's so dumb.
wait. I'm still in there.
Man.
Did you leave it?
Wait, did I leave it? I don't think I left it. Wait, did I?
I
I
don't.
don't see it, man.
I don't think they
Am I in the
completed.
group on your end?
Let me see. I think so. Let me see. Wait, no. Samantha removed you.
What the fuck? I got fucking deleted. I got yeeted. You're still in there, but I got fucking.
It's because
thrown out.
they want to set up the DM the conversation with just the two of us.
With just you and
Yeah.
wow. Okay, well, yeah, it was a bit like weird because we had our statements prepped way in advance, and here's the thing, like I got their stances, I think like this morning for me,
Yeah.
and I was busy the entire fucking day doing IKEA furniture. I didn't have time to prep for shit, and
Yeah.
then we had like our little call before I was meant to take a nap,
Yeah.
but that was like all I was able to do. But you know, I probably it went like very satisfactory nevertheless. But
For sure. And I think,
I-
it was kind of weird. I really do think 3 topics is just way too much. And we did like show our hand basically. We gave them like our study long in advance. Like, I mean, our response long in advance. Like, hey, here's what we believe, whatever, yada, 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 yada. I think it's really telling though that we specifically mentioned the caricatures on both sides and how like people are like, there are bad actors and that's not what we're here to debate. And at least every single topic, it was like, but leftists, crazy leftists say every time, bro, they can't actually argue. They have to posture.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When they brought up that 1.3 second study, which we had talked about right
Yeah.
before,
I was
I
like,
fucking
yeah.
knew it. I fucking knew it. We had a call like 2 hours before the debate. I was like, if they're gonna talk about the systemic racism, it's gonna actually be against white people, and the one study they're gonna use is going to be the one about the shooting times. Right on fucking cue, she pulls that shit, and then there was the Cesario study, which was. Yeah, it was that one that got debunked, and then she sent me back a fucking preprint in response to it, where they lost their 2 original authors.
That was when you called that out, bro. I just laughed and like backed off. Like, okay, well, that's the end of that.
It's done. It's over.
Yeah, finito. That was too good, bro. It was too good. Yeah, man. I wish I had the dates too. When she's talking about like, what about Irish and and it's like Irish immigration happened in 1820. Like, that's when it started, and then like it's like by the time you're talking about all these years where they had like their whiteness and they weren't like considered like lesser citizens, and so they've reaped all these crazy benefits since then, and it's like they're the same. It's like freak out of here, bro. That's why you need but she threw that in at the end, so we didn't really get to delve into that. But
yeah, I mean she wasn't gonna like Hunga Master in chat says like, oh, I should have asked her like when she talked about the single parenthood rate, like why do you think there are higher rates of single parents and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And like obviously that gets to the answer we want to take, but I think one of us did ask at that point. She was like, oh, now you're asking me to solve the entirety issue of Black Americans. It's like she wasn't gonna answer that question no matter what.
She kept avoiding them every time.
Yeah, she wouldn't answer that question. I think it went really good. Oh my god, dude! When I saw there was a fucking preprint, that's fucking amazing.
It was like, oh, good stuff, good stuff.
Yeah, I was like sitting on this. I was waiting to say it, and I was like, oh, when's the best time? And then she ends one of her statements by referencing it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Jeez.
I'm fucking in. Oh my god.
Oh man, that's good stuff though. All right, well look, stream. I love you guys. It's been a good moment. I gotta close this. Editor's gonna put a video out tomorrow. Yeah, life is good. You can follow me. I'm getting a new computer. I have my new computer. I'm driving. When I get off this thing, I'm driving to LA to go pick up my new computer. 1080p computer. It's going down, bro.
Oh shit.
Yeah. We're gonna be whatever. And my music production is gonna get better. I'm gonna have way more resources. It's going down.
Nice. That sounds fucking phenomenal. And shout out your album again, by the way.
Oh yeah. Twitch.tv/Fanatiq. Oh no, the album. Fanatiq, Fanatiq. The name of the album is Soundscapes. And the other album is Retro Future. And you can check both of those out. And they're pretty freaking sick. Yeah. I mean, that's that. Rose. Really quick. Where'd your name come from? Where'd you pick up your name from?
Yeah, so basically like I'm just getting your link so I can spam it in chat. Yeah, so basically the rose stands for, my social democratic political leanings, and it is with my wrist that I will write the revolutionary text that will drive us forward towards the new. No, okay, roses are fucking pretty, and when I made my name, I played a fuck ton of foosball, and you need your wrist to play foosball, and the words worked well together, so it was like rose wrist. That's literally it. People ask me this question so much, and I get the same answer every time.
I was like, wait, what the freak is he talking about? That's OD. That's OD. Oh man.
But yeah, that's what's going on. All right, well, great fucking debate. If you ever want to have more debates on this topic or anything else, hit me up because you're an excellent debater, and it was fun debating with you.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciated you as well. All right, peace.
Bye-bye.
All right, stream. 1080p is coming. I'm going to go get my stuff. Let me message these niggas and make sure that they're still up. I'm going to get Red Bull if I got to. I will stay up until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, driving all the way to LA. I don't care. I got to get this computer. It's time. 1080p, Windows 10, better processor, like less artifacting when I'm producing. Yeah, just everything's going to be better, bro. That's all I need. I need this. Like, we're about to get this. And I promise you, you put me in a 1v1 situation with Lauren Southern, I'm a whip.